What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to have on the show today MK Ultra, satanic ritual abuse, and organized abuse survivor, overcomer, and warrior, Australia's first whistleblower of government-sponsored child sex trafficking, published writer and author, blogger, and a hero whose voice has set countless victims and survivors free, Fiona Barnett. Here's a little bit about Fiona and some of what you can expect to hear about on today's episode. Born into a world tainted by multi-generational trauma, Fiona's nightmare began in childhood, ensnared in Australia's underbelly of elite pedophile rings and occult rituals. Ritually abused by figures including her Nazi grandparents, British Playschool presenter John Hamblin, and CIA-linked psychologists like Antony Kidman, father of actress Nicole Kidman, she endured programming that include things like hypnosis, psychedelics, rape, waterboarding, sensory deprivation, spinning, and electrocution as part of MK Ultra and MK Delta programming. These experiments unfolded in places that were hidden, where she was groomed as a candy girl, child prostitute, trafficked to VIPs, including people like US President Richard Nixon, media mogul Ted Turner, and actress Meryl Streep, and trained as an MK Delta child soldier in psychic warfare involving gruesome acts like cannibalism and the most dangerous game of human hunting. Fiona's awakening marked a pivotal turn. Over a decade ago, she became the first whistleblower to publicly expose Australia's involvement in Western military intelligence coordinated trafficking operations, testifying before the Child Abuse Royal Commission, holding a high-profile Sydney press conference, and submitting complaints to health authorities, NSW Police, and the Australian Federal Police. Her allegations against Antony Kidman led to his placement on suicide watch and mysterious death in Singapore with altered cause of death reports. Undeterred by the relentless harassment and defamation, Fiona launched a 6-year independent campaign for victim protection and trauma therapy. Blacklisted from mainstream platforms, she turned to alternative media, collaborating on the historically groundbreaking Candy Girl documentary, hosting podcasts, publishing articles and blogs, and releasing her groundbreaking book, Eyes Wide Open, for free, an underground classic distributed via David Icke's website, detailing trauma-based mind control, satanic ritual abuse, and global cover-ups without any monetization. Her efforts reintroduced ritual abuse into public discourse, influencing Prime Minister Scott Morrison's 2018 national apology to child abuse victims, sparking police task force, and leading to convictions of low-level perpetrators. Yet it is Fiona's indomitable spirit that elevates her from survivor to legend, a fierce advocate whose courage has ignited a global reckoning. As a pioneer in trauma-focused integration therapy, she guides others towards healing, rejecting harmful practices like ECT and hypnosis in favor of things like bilateral stimulation, herbal remedies, and grounding techniques that restore the fragmented self. Fiona's legacy is far more than a record of pain endured. It's a living testament to the invincible power of one human heart that refuses to be extinguished. She has proven that even when the darkness is deepest, when every institution turns away, when every door slams shut, when the weight of the world's oldest evils press us down, truth can still rise like dawn after the longest night. She has turned her scars into a map for the lost, her voice into a lighthouse for the silenced, and her unbowed spirit into a promise that no child need ever suffer alone again, that no predator is untouchable forever, and that healing is not merely possible, it is inevitable when courage meets compassion. Fiona is not just a survivor. She is the living proof that light does not merely endure the darkness, it conquers it. She's the warrioress who reminds every broken soul that they too carry within them the same fierce divine spark capable of rewriting the future. And because she dared to speak, because she chose love over silence, because she refused to let evil have the final word, a new generation is rising, eyes wide open, hearts on fire, ready to finish what she so bravely began, the restoration of innocence, the triumph of justice, and the unbreakable dawn of human freedom. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, survivor and survivor advocate, passionate purveyor of truth, warrioress, hero, walking miracle, and someone who has pioneered the survivor movement to be what it is today, the one, the only, Fiona Barnett. Fiona, it is an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Emma. Thanks for the amazing introduction. I think we can just call it quits there. That's it. Yeah, that was it.
You're so worthy
tearing
of it.
up when I hear it like that from third person. I was like going, "Oh, this person sounds cool." I'm going, "Yeah, okay, it was myself." But yeah, I don't know. I don't see myself. I don't know. I don't see myself in such a positive light. I just,
Well, see what other people do. I know I told you this in email, but I just want to state it here. You have no idea how many times in the last 6 years your name specifically has come up in countless survivor testimonies who have come on my channel, all the way from older generations down to brand new survivors who are just waking up. It is amazing the impact that you have had that you probably don't even realize, and how many people have read your book, have heard your voice, and the inspiration that you were to give them the courage to come speak out. It's so powerful, but you face so much loss and hardship coming out that it probably is very hard to balance, hearing the voices cheering you on with all the attacks.
Yeah, I was utterly attacked by Australia, by the CIA-controlled press in Australia. Australia has been controlled by the CIA for decades and decades, especially, look what they did, the coup d'etat that they led against Gough Whitlam, one of my perps, back in the 70s, and, ousted him out of government, but really have been very, targeted. But then there's, and look, when I first came out, when I was first posting publicly, it would have been 2011, I think, like with the internet. People didn't believe that women were capable of, molesting kids. And incest was the only thing people were struggling with. They're just struggling to understand the concept incest and whatever. That was more before the Wood-Royal Commission, which was the first attempt to quash this sort of testimony in Australia, and that happened in the early 90s. And of course, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, who was head of psychological operations in the US Army, and he's one of my direct MK Ultra perps as well, MK Delta as well. He, rose up and, started the Satanic Panic False Memory Foundation, stacked with pedos and CIA psychologists with falsified research and all that sort of thing. And that was very effective in Australia, very effective. It's more effective, still effective. They still teach that rubbish in universities. So, and it still guides what psychologists are allowed to think, say, and do over here. So my goal many years ago was to stick a bomb under the False Memory Foundation and the whole idea of the existence of a false memory syndrome, which never existed. It was never in the DSM. It was nothing. It was just rubbish, and it was just propaganda. And my goal was to destroy that, and I did. And they took it down, and Michael Aquino was very worried when I came out. When I first came out, I talked about, I released things very slowly. First of all, before I went public myself, I did a lot of liaising and background sort of, lay journalism with people over here. And I used to look the pedophile ring involving a New South Wales teacher. I went and, trod the streets collecting witness statements, signed statements and everything, giving them to the police and giving them to journalists and what have you. Back in 2004, I was doing that. And before that, I tried writing a book. I submitted it everywhere. I wrote a book and submitted it in 1994. When was that? Before the Wood Royal Commission, because I went overseas and they said, "Oh, we believe your story, but we don't know how to make the public believe it." And this was from a company that published the Bible in Australia, and I'm like, "Well, how do you make anyone believe that?" So anyway, I went overseas for a year, and that's when the Wood Royal Commission stuff broke and all these stories of child trafficking, and it involved, prominent police officers and entertainers and politicians, and Sydney-based, and all the Labor politicians owned the brothels in King's Cross, so they were child trafficking kids there, and Hillsong Church, what it was back then, the founder of that, he was heavily involved. And so I came back to Australia, and I couldn't understand. It was like I'd come back in a time warp, and I couldn't understand what the hell had just happened. And suddenly everyone not only believed in incest, they're talking about satanic ritual abuse and stuff. So that was soon quashed by Michael Kino. And anyway, and then I resolved I'm going to bring back into the Australian public the Wood Royal Commission, which nobody had heard of or was talking about unless they were my age. And they weren't certain, no one was talking about it. And I was going to expose Hillsong Church, and with a friend, we destroyed that church. And I was going to expose the boys' homes involved in trafficking children to MK Ultra experiments at the base, and prostituting young boys to politicians, etc. And I was going to expose, what else was I going to do? The False Memory Foundation. I was successful in all of those things. And people, unless they were online watching what happened as it happened, they wouldn't understand what I did. And then it went mental. I started off in the mainstream news, and then I was blacklisted. I wasn't allowed to be talked about. And the journalists, I still hold a very strong relationship with the journalists. So they knew I was real. And I just so many times missed out on hitting big time the mainstream news when Nicole Kidman's father jumped off a building, his daughter's hotel balcony in Singapore. And then over the course of the day, the story changed a few times. And that was the opportunity. And, I had security guards. I had a prominent magazine, people from a prominent magazine here came to interview me and all that sort of thing. Well, I had military trained security detail, harassed the hell out of us that day. And they admitted to the journalist that, that was the case. And anyway, and nearly the local newspaper, I had a good relationship with them, and the editor at the time chickened out of putting it on the front page, and that would have changed history. And then I had another victim of Bob Hawke, our Prime Minister, a very credible one who had photos with Bob because he was a family friend. He'd sexually assaulted her, and she was coming out to a press conference, and she didn't want to come at the end. And, there was so many. And the National Enquirer, the gossip mag in your country, was about to run a story, and Nicole Kidman's lawyers sent a very threatening letter to Dylan Howard. So he had to pull the story because over there, apparently you own your own image. So they said, look, no photos, no story. I came very close to really blowing it open. And then I went alternative, and then I had some idiots posting some articles associating me with some, just garbage. And that's all they needed in Australia, they had someone who works for them, for the CIA. And then this MI6 piece of garbage on ABC, which is our national broadcasting, government-owned broadcasting network. Well, they attacked me. They attacked me on national news and mocked me and defamed me. put in a retraction ages later, some sentence down the end of some webpage somewhere that no one ever saw. And then I was just, and ABC, they just kept coming back, and they came and hit me again. I think 2021, they tried it a couple of times by attacking me and framing me as a QAnon right-wing terror nutter. And I was never QAnon. And they, what else did they do? And the Prime Minister himself came after me. Scott Morrison came after me and sent his friend, whose wife, he and his wife worked for Morrison, and they brought Isaac Cappy over that time. So Isaac Cappy was Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino's MK Ultra asset, and that's what he was. And there was one reason only that Isaac came to the fore and started talking about pedos in Hollywood and all that sort of thing. It was after I had caused chaos by posting some articles online in 2016, which Anonymous took, and like it went viral. I wrote an article called "Watergate Was Pedogate," and I wrote stuff about. I just reposted a victim's allegations against Tom Hanks, and that went mental. And Tom Hanks was furious, and he was very involved in Isaac Cappy's demise. And anyway, so Isaac was brought out here by the Australian Prime Minister, was sponsored by him. And then Isaac stayed with me, best part of a month, and tried to get police agents inserted into my home so that they could basically come and either gun me down or, is a right-wing terror threat, or drag me off to Paul Mullen's fixated persons unit. And Paul Mullen is the piece of shit MK Ultra psychiatrist who he started up 3 fixated persons units in the UK and 3 in Australia. And anybody who spoke out against the royal family, Prince Andrew, he would imprison them and re-MK Ultra them. Yep. There's articles I put up on the Twitter site, a link to it. Just a screenshot. He wrote an article in 2008 around the time Epstein was convicted, and calling people who attack the royal family crazy and psychotic. Yeah. So that's Paul Mullen. Go and research that piece of garbage. And he's the one who said that he's the one who helped take all the guns off Australians, the Port Arthur massacre. He was the one who so-called assessed Martin Bryant, said he had an IQ of about 60, and then said he pulled off a headshot rate of someone with an IQ of about 160. So, he's been involved in a lot of the same sort of thing that Louis Jolyon West used to do, the Patty Hearst, incident and all that sort of stuff. They're just involved in all the propaganda and, the military control of the narrative. So anyway, Isaac, I warned, I held nothing against Isaac. I actually really liked him, and our family were so kind to him. I was not as tolerant. I was getting frustrated. He handed me about 4 numbers for Michael Aquino so I could ring him. And if anyone knows anything about hypnosis, and hypnosis is great as a therapy technique if you get someone like Corridon Hammond who is ethical and can use it properly. Otherwise, it's lethal. So hypnosis, it doesn't take long for a few inductions, and hypnosis becomes a conditioned response. And it brings the right hemisphere into prominence and into dominance, and represses the left hemisphere. And then whatever happens when the right hemisphere is dominant won't be remembered unless you suggest that it be remembered. So all it would have taken for Michael Aquino, who was one of my key perps, was to utter a few words and I'd be back under, because I hadn't integrated that stuff yet. So when all that failed, and Isaac realised all the people around him in Australia and the police informants, they're all narcs they was trying to bring in here, when he realised what they were and said so. And he says on a video, a recording, he says, I was sent to set up someone everyone, knows and loves. And he didn't mention my name, but that was me. I'd just like to say that in the end, he he did the right thing and he didn't sell us out. He came to a children's, I get teary because he came to a kids' concert of my daughter doing this. It was a terrible ballet concert at the school. My daughter was a phenomenal dancer. It's not her, but the school was terrible. And there were kids on there. It was all kind of, and I was there going, oh, this is so embarrassing. I brought Isaac, so sorry, Isaac, who's been in films and stuff. And, but he was there and loving it like this. And he came outside and he broke and he dissociated. And he says, I don't want to be a patsy. He just broke down crying. That concert broke him, broke through the programming. And I talked to him as someone who knew he was programmed. And I said, don't betray my family, Isaac. Do not betray those kids. And he went home and I said, Isaac, they're going to kill you if you go back. You realise that. They're going to kill you. And he went back and, I think the day before he died, I could just feel it. And I told Ty from, she had a podcast then, Ty from Out of the Gate. I said, they're going to kill him, And anyway, then I said, like, he's going to be dead soon. And I think I could pick up on what they would have tortured him at that NSA base nearby. And the person, I know who killed him. It was the piece of shit Navy SEAL that hated me, and I exposed him. I used to have all the stuff up on my website exposing him. He was the last person to see Isaac. Isaac called on him thinking, when he was panicked, thinking, oh, he'll help me. No, he wouldn't. So, and then Tom Hanks, of course, posted that roadkill tweet, making reference to Isaac, who was already dead by the time they threw him off, whatever they did, threw him off a bridge. And, and then so any talk about all the alternative narratives and things, and they're attacking my friend David Schurter over it because he's been going on about it. And David Schurter, who is Michael Aquino's victim as well, and, did talk to Isaac, and Isaac did offer David Schurter the phone number and said, do you want to phone him? And David Schurter and I are going, fuck no. What are you doing? Why? What are you doing? Don't go hang around this guy. But anyway, and then put it all together later. So Michael Aquino, his big role is he was mates with Jim Watkins. They were both in the military, and Jim Watkins was running 8chan. It was a pet porn site. And then it turned into the host of QAnon. And I don't know if you got the articles over there, but Jim Watkins and his son played Q. So QAnon was the psychological operation that replaced False Memory Foundation. So Michael Aquino, in direct response to me coming out in 2016 and talking about this stuff, disbanded the False Memory Foundation, and then next thing replaced it with QAnon. And then I was hailed as the QAnon poster child over here. I had journalists say to me, oh, so you're the QAnon poster child. What, so you're not QAnon? I said, what? No, I never said I was. But what I had was, there was a contact with the Australian Federal Police who said, Fiona, don't ever criticise QAnon, and don't criticise Alex Jones online. He said, because that's your vehicle for gaining traction and exposing this stuff. So that's the tact I took. And, it was all the Christians, the genuine Christians in America who supported me, when I came out against Billy Graham. Oh man, that went wild. In the Bible Belt, that went mental when I was exposing it. And then his son, Franklin Graham, put up a tweet that's in my book, Eyes Wide Open, that says, love these killer donuts, where Billy Graham's so-called preacher son is eating at Voodoo Donuts, where they manufacture donuts of Jesus Christ crucified on a cock and balls donut. And encircled pentagram donuts and all this sort of stuff. And he's there, and it was a direct threat against me, and people knew it as such at the time. So that caused quite the stir in the Bible Belt, and people withdrew their support for, Samaritan's Purse, and for, they cut Franklin Graham's, charity group out of their wills, all sorts of things. I was told I'm the talk of the dinner tables, Sunday lunch dinner, dinner talk. So anyway, so that's sort of some of the features of what happened. But so I had a massive followings, like up to 100,000 views a day on my blog site, something like that. And my stuff was anonymous, posted it just before the election, and it really went viral. And I don't know, they say it helped get, Clinton out, Hillary. And then I was there when all the pedophiles dropped, and, all the stuff about, to do with all the presidents back then. And, and it's a bipartisan issue. I was trafficked to Nixon, Republican. It's not like I'm siding with the Republicans, but they were they were a great support, the Christian people. And people, and then suddenly everyone's portraying Christians as Nazis and far right. I just have to say, people have got to go and look at history, which people fail to do now, that the National Socialist Party, Hitler's party, was far left. They were Marxist, just as communists, were. That's why my perpetrators could be both Nazi doctors or what have you, and communists. So that was the history of the people, who abused me. So anyway, that said, I put out my book, Eyes Wide Open, so Isaac was here late 2018. I put out my book, Eyes Wide Open, in about January 2019, the first edition that David Icke put up. And then I think Isaac died sometime, I don't know, was it in 2019? And then Michael Kino was dead not long after, within a couple of months or so, 2 or 3 months. So when someone like that dies, it's like Antony Kidman. When they fail, that's why Kino was so desperate. When they fail, that's it. They kill them. They just sacrifice them. So, so that was that wild ride. And then I put out a 2020 lockdown edition. That was a bit of a joke, but just a little bit of, because between the first and the last edition, so much had happened. And I just did, well, here's an update, and if I didn't update now, my goodness, the book would be like that thick, so. But anyway, and then I was, but what people have to understand is when I came out and throughout all of that and writing the book, I was still dissociative. So the part that you saw, running around, being chased by, CIA or Australian military intelligence, or around the world and this and that, and who wrote the book and whatever, was the Alice military intelligence trained part. And that's how I was able to do it all. When people think, oh, she was fearless and all this sort of thing, well, I wouldn't do it right now. I'd sit there and go, well, that would be fucking stupid, doing that and that, and so I read it through fresh eyes, and I read my book and I go, well, I was on the mark. Like, I've since done a bit of formal neuroscience study and stuff. And the book I wrote to appeal to lay people, and it was written in a rush. It was never edited, and I still didn't get to edit to the next edition or the next edition, because my computer kept on being attacked. And so it's up there raw. It's full of mistakes. I didn't get to edit some things out. There was a wrong reference to do with Shapiro's EMDR stuff. I had the wrong reference in there. I couldn't find the article. It all just had to go up because I was being attacked. I was like, oh man, just disperse this. And so it's, that's just like, no one has edited that, apart from some friends reading through and go, oh, you've left this out, or there's a mistake there, but it was shocking. And for someone who's a perfectionist, it was like grating on my nerves. So, yeah. So anyway, I put it out for free. I never put it on Amazon because it was never good enough, I thought. But other people went and sold it on Amazon, when it says inside, this is free. Anyway, whatever. So I did that. And then, so know that while I'm doing all of this, I'm still processing my own stuff. And I went into even more intense therapy during lockdown, up to 7 hours a week of therapy. Yeah. But what I did in the end was I actually I actually integrated. So, and integration isn't this magic cure-all thing. All I mean by that is I no longer dissociate into parts that have names, you know. I no longer succumb to any sort of attachment trauma. That's a big thing they've got to heal, because it's all attachment based, what they do. I can easily remember stuff if I go into that, if I'm placed in an altered state of consciousness, because you don't see, this is what survivors have to understand, and the basis of all successful therapy is understanding that, for a start, everything that you hear about now, all the trauma and dissociation therapy, you know, that whole world is run by the CIA and their cutouts. So I wrote a list here. So these are the fake ones. ISSTD, they're just all CIA. Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, Dan Siegel, Stephen Porges and Peter Levine, they're all CIA, right? They're there to control the narrative. I mean, Stephen Porges works for the Kinsey Institute. The ones that did all the pedophile, let's rape children, recall what happens, you know, for MK Ultra, and horrific. I mean, that would be, as I say, that would be like, I work for Auschwitz, but it's okay now. Still got the same name, but you know, whatever. These people have recently put out, and this is another reason why I've come out. I wanted to actually tell people what works, what therapies work, and that's because these pieces of shit recently, some of them put together. You've got a conference series. They're advertising conferences and saying, "Oh, come and do this for free," especially in Australia. And also I attended it, and another friend at the level that I've been abused at, attended. And it was like, oh my God, it was all hypnosis induction. Oh, we're going deep now. Let's go deep. Let's take this really deep. And I screenshot a lot of stuff, thank goodness. Oh, that was deep, that session. Let's do it deeper. Oh my gosh, just by mentioning the word deep, survivors are going to go into a state of hypnosis. And this is what they did. It was all hypnotic. And then they had this piece of shit that no one's ever heard of. This female hypnotist came on, and she's NLP and hypnosis and whatever, hypnotizing everybody mid conference session on Zoom, and it was attended by tens of thousands of people. So I was so disgusted. And then you've got these other people running around the world. I'm DID, I've got 5 parts. You don't need to integrate like me. I'm fine. I can go to international conferences and talk and everything, and I'm good. I don't have to integrate. What? So you're saying that you have 5 parts that have naturally, organically formed from incest, and you're coming out and telling people with military created, systems of, hundreds and thousands of parts, telling them what to do. That's wrong. That's misleading. And the other thing is you've got Dan Siegel's, one of his clients, has come out and published a book and said, and in the lead up, which I screenshot when she was advertising it, saying, parts, they don't have roles, explicit roles or anything. They don't, yeah. And then you read the book, and Dan Siegel used hypnosis on her, used proper hypnotic induction to treat her. And yet these people all damn hypnosis, because False Memory Foundation said, it's suggestive and, Okay, yes, it's suggestive. Yes, it's a weapon if you are out to harm the client and rape them or something, or MK Ultra them or whatever. But I tell you what, it's the most effective therapy if you can get someone like Corridon Hammond, who won't talk about this anymore because he's got death threats, to do it. It is the one most effective therapy that calms the person, regulates them more than EMDR, which, by the way, places you in an altered state of consciousness as well. These therapy techniques that are pushed by the CIA, like cognitive behavioural therapy, right? That was introduced to Australia by my perp, Antony Kidman, and the guy who helped write the manual for torturing people in Guantanamo Bay, that sort of thing. Those are the people who introduced CBT to the world, and it's based on the work of Carl Rogers and that, who was an MK Ultra perpetrator and pedophile, who used, and then they had conferences at Disney World and they were teaching people how to MK Ultra kids there. I mean, for goodness sake. Anyway, so and Milton Erickson and that lot. In the end, people have to understand that none of the modern techniques that are pushed at universities in Australia, I don't know how it is in America, work. It's all CBT, CBT, CBT. And then if you go to hospital, they'll electrocute you and drug you and tell you you're psychotic for saying these things. So we're in the dark ages of Australia, still one flew over the cuckoo's nest here. And so really what people have to understand is that the research that informs proper therapy, you'll find dating back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s. And you have to go back and find all the research papers. And in America, you guys can do it. You can go to Stanford University libraries, stuff you can't get online, and you will find all the original stuff. All right. And the very first work, and MK Ultra, people got to understand who founded MK Ultra, who started the Macy conferences. Margaret Mead, Gregory Bateson, OSS, CIA. It came out from England, right? This is all England. And Aldous Huxley. They started the Cultural Revolution in America. They're behind the Beatles. They're behind, all your Esalen. They're behind all the acid rock and the revolution, the sexual revolution, the hippies, the Haight-Ashbury stuff, with Jolyon West. They're behind it all, and they have been hidden. Okay, so Margaret Mead came out to Australia and lectured at University of Sydney. She was in Papua New Guinea with my perpetrator, Dr. Leonis Petrauskas, who was, son of the guy second in charge of the Soviet Union and a Nazi doctor. He was friends with my step-grandmother, and really good friends with Antony Kidman. And he and Eric Traub, head of Nazi bioweapons, came out, were under Operation Matchbox from England, and were allowed into, signed off by ASIO, our security agency, to go to Papua New Guinea and develop the stuff that became the latest jabs. All right, they were the beginning. And then, what was I saying about that? Margaret Mead. She lectured at the University of Sydney based on falsified research, and started the sexual revolution in the 60s in Australia. And Gregory Bateson, her husband, was one of the leaders of MK Ultra around the world, and he had his own big lair, 7 stories below Holsworthy Army Base, and where he abused me when I was young. And he was a pedophile rapist and an expert hypnotist who was really good friends with Milton Erickson, who was the master hypnotist, and taught him everything. So they all studied hypnosis, they studied psychedelics, they studied, the 2 core things that mark the beginning of MK Ultra, which is psychedelics and hypnosis. So you need to go and study those 2. Tripping on Utopia is a book that's been released by someone who's an apologist for them. And it's like a whitewash of what they did, but it's a load of crap. Go and look up the research yourselves. So those 2 helped introduce MK Ultra to Australia. And then, of course, head MK Ultra psychiatrist Martin Orne came to Australia in 1960 and taught a whole bunch of people, unethical hypnosis, plus things like hooking kids up to ECGs in the Madsen building, which was CSIR-owned building at Sydney Uni, and raping them and recording what that does to the brains. Yeah, and teaching a whole bunch of students, by the way, at Sydney Uni in lab coats. See what it done. This kid's screaming for his mum in front of me, and his little kid's about 6. And that was Phil Sutcliffe was raping him. at the time that he was screaming. And so all that, when Louise Walker, she trained under Martin Orne there. Peter Shan, he was there for some of these things. He's a liar when he interviewed with ABC media here and said, "Oh, we didn't know that was all we were being funded by MK Ultra." Yes, you did, you piece of shit. I saw you there. You know, these people would be flying around the world, come back for special symposiums and special things. You know, like I was like an absolute, you know, ideal candidate for MK Delta, and so they'd all come back and they'd all go, "Okay, now learn this. This is, you know, what we're doing with this one." She's one of those chosen ones. Anyway, so yeah, so that was Sydney Uni. It went on. Sydney Uni, CSIRO were involved in a lot of the MK Ultra stuff. They had labs at Pine Gap in the middle of Australia. They had, which was CIA. They got labs all around the world. They liaised with CIA everywhere. They had labs at Enstone Nuclear Reactor, 20-story underground lab facility there. They had a lab in there and shared it. And they had a lot to do with, they had the Madsen building purpose-built for them in 1944 at University of Sydney, although ownership was transferred to the university in 1980. Well, I still saw MK Ultra. I was still being abused there after 1980, you know. So, and then you had the whole, so there was that. So I was basically, there's all different levels of being abused within the CIA network. So, and MK Ultra. MK Ultra was a whole bunch of experiments, but the end product really was a few things. There was MK Delta. So all the stuff that they were researching with MK Ultra. So, you know, all the techniques they use, you know, rape and torture and electrocution and sensory deprivation, all that sort of stuff. It was to create assassins, soldiers, child prostitutes, even though, you know, that's not a nice term, but, you know, kids to traffic to the elites who would be able to act as human tape recorders, you know, and elicit information from these pedos. And so there's all different levels that they used us for. And I just happened to, because I was blue-eyed blonde, because I was multi-generational, because I was of the right bloodline. I was very dexterous. I was very, very high IQ, very visual spatial IQ, which is what they want. Because I was, you know, very attractive when I was young, then I was perfect for the whole show. So I was taken in and trained from, they targeted me from age 1 in my grandmother's kitchen. I was targeted from age 1 for a candidate for all of it, and then they, as you go on, they see what you're good at. So I became this, and know that this is all the techniques they use in MK Ultra is a lot of the esoteric techniques that the secret societies passed on for generations, and they were experts like the Egyptians. They were experts on MK Ultra techniques, trauma, and, you know, drugging and this sort of thing. So they used me for everything. I was like the smorgasbord of possibilities all in one. So I was flatlined 40 times. That's how they created each part. Yeah, the main parts were created through flatlining. So people call about near-death, they talk about near-death experiences, NDEs. They're actually death experiences. They flatline your heart and then you're reborn, you know. And I was like, you know, initiated into a whole bunch of secret societies, both within the military and then just the ones you see outside. So I was initiated into, so I became the Grand Dame at 14, and that meant I was the second highest ranking female in the secret societies in Australia. Second to Lorraine Desmond, who an Australian actor and singer and entertainer, who was the grandmother of darkness. And I was trained up by Patricia Ann Conlon, who was the previous Grand Dame. Anyway, so I was it, you know, and I was supposed to be in there for life, etc. I was from put through full military training at Holsworthy at age 6. My first trainer was Commander Victor Chan. Now, people don't realise he was just a communist from Vietnam, and from the Vietnam War, but he was an Australian leading heart surgeon, very famous over here. He did the first heart transplant on Fiona in, I don't know, was it the 80s or something? But he was in charge of the CIA organ trafficking, black market human organ trafficking operation. He was an evil, nasty piece of shit and a cannibal. Anyway, he trained the MK Delta soldiers. So all MK Delta soldiers, as Fritz Springmeier rightly said, have all been MK Ultra's kids, whether they remember it or not. They all first have been targeted since they're little kids and raised in this stuff. And then, they may think I'm going to join the military. No, they were destined. So I was put through military training age 6. Look, I was operational from all those ages, once they'd done the basics on me. So, prostituted over in America and all that sort of thing after they'd really done the basics. And, and at Disney World and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, then there was Ted Turner, there was Bohemian Grove, what's his face, Billy Graham at Bohemian Grove, and there was all satanic ritual murders at Bohemian Grove, etc. Before that was Richard Nixon in the back of a CIA plane at a military airport in Canberra, and he's the one who recommended me to Billy Graham. And when I turned up to this pink cabin in Bohemian Grove, everything was pink. It was so camp, and pink fluffy this, pink that, and he had a pink, some sort of cocktail, and it was Billy Graham, and he says, "Oh, my good friend Richard Nixon, recommended you," and all this sort of whatever, said you're a good girl, and whatever. Anyway, so that was that, and so it went on for years. I was served in the military in Nicaragua. I piloted planes at Area 51, symbiotic aircraft, participated in bombing. See, I'll come back to that and remind me. I'll make a note because I've got no brain anymore. I'll come back to that. And Dulce, they're the bases over in America, the main bases. And I went to the farm. I was trained at the farm, where the CIA was trained. And I can tell you what that looks like. I saw experiments there with mushrooms, psychedelic mushroom type stuff. I saw them breeding weird butterflies, poisonous butterflies, and the brain. So this is very important before I go on and why they chose us and this sort of thing. So the brain, as I say, has 2 hemispheres, and the most important fundamental thing to understand is hemispheric lateralization. So every day when you walk around, your left hemisphere is dominant. So your left hemisphere is the verbal part of your brain. It gives everything context. It time, date, place, stamps things. So you have conscious memory of things. It's not very emotional. It only processes anger. It's not empathic. It's not capable of empathy. All those things are right hemisphere tasks. So the right hemisphere processes interdimensionally. That's very important, and research is starting to say that now. It's very important to remember that. The right hemisphere is what you alpha sync with someone with, and that oxytocin release and the bond. It's the part that when you're taught advanced astral projection, that's the part that's used. It can link with it's interdimensional, so it has interdimensional capacities. And this is all Gnostic secret society knowledge, okay, and what they teach in Gnostic societies, secret societies. So the right hemisphere is non-dominant in everyday activity. However, various things can bring the right hemisphere into dominance, and anything that does that, the more the right hemisphere becomes dominant, the more you go into what's called an altered state of consciousness. The things that make the right hemisphere dominant can be high arousal or low arousal. So high arousal can be blaring rock music, like at a Hillsong church concert. Can be Tony Robbins, that sort of thing. It can be, revival meetings. It can be shamanistic trance meetings where dum 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 drumming will do it. Any sort of rhythmic movement, the brain will, the firing rate of the brain will start mimicking whatever that sensory input is, whether it's lights, tapping, drumming, anything audible, anything you see, right? Anything you feel will be, it's called entrainment, and the brain will start copying it. And if that source of stimuli is very slow and goes at a slow rate, your brain will start going through different phases. So from beta, which is alert, to alpha, which is preparation for suggestibility, to theta, which is hypnosis, and complete suggestibility switches off the left brain, which critically analyzes things, and then delta, which is very deep trance, and even lower. That's what hypnosis is, a low, arousal form of bringing the right hemisphere into dominance, relaxation, visualization, slow music, these very slow, dancing, these sorts of rhythmic activities. These things, can subtly bring the brain into the right hemisphere into dominance. And anything that happens when the right hemisphere is dominant goes into implicit memory system, and you can't remember it when the left hemisphere comes online. That's the whole trick, and this is what they don't tell you. So this is why hypnosis is the most successful method of making the right hemisphere dominant, so you can go in there and retrieve the material that happened, the memories. And they call it now, memory reconsolidation and everything. What they used to call false memories and repressed memories. It's all back in fashion, people. They just call it something else. So it's all right now to call it that. So ketamine will do it, drugs, will place you in an altered state, and then you can access. And there's something called state-dependent memory, which used to originally be called dissociation of learning, right? State-dependent memory is if you bring something into right hemisphere dominance and something happens, and then you come back online, your left hemisphere comes back online, you can't remember what happened. When you do something that activates those same neural pathways that were activated while that right hemisphere was dominant, it's called state-dependent memory. You place the state in your brain in the same altered state it was in at the time of whatever happened, whether it be a trauma or someone hypnotized you or something. You will retrieve that information. It'll just bring that back online. You'll be placed in the same state of mind you were in at the time of whatever happened. So trauma bypasses the left hemisphere, and all the stimuli, the sensory stimuli from trauma, goes straight into the right hemisphere undigested by the left hemisphere, and it stays there as like undigested particles of food. So it'll be all the sensory information, sights, sounds, smells, feels, and then every now and then when it's triggered, because a reminder will activate that memory engram, but it won't have any words, it won't have any time, date, place, context of the left hemisphere, because the hippocampus was suppressed and the amygdala was like overactivated, and and then you'll have a flashback, and then so suddenly you're like, oh shit, I feel like this. You'll be suddenly angry for like no reason. 1 moment ago you're fine, and suddenly you're triggered, and your left brain will look around for something in your immediate environment to blame for that feeling, for that sensation. And if the dog's annoying you, or the kids, or your partner, or whatever, you'll blame them. The left hemisphere will automatically time, date, place, stamp back and go, oh, it's your fault. So, relationships are strained, dog gets kicked, whatever. Anyhow, so this is I call it my dissociation of learning trauma model. And then I call what they did. So the military weaponized their understanding of trauma dissociation. So trauma places you in this altered state of consciousness. So dissociation, it causes dissociation. So in order to access those, in order to heal from trauma and dissociation that happen to people like me in this elite system, if they've, were abused by one of the secret societies, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, OTO, OES, they're the ones that got me. And then in the military, there was Order of Dagon, which Michael Aquino was in, and then a few other orders, Lilith and Leviathan. And I was in the Order of Illuminati, of course, because of the bloodline thing. I was also abused by Jesuits and Freemasons, but females aren't initiated into them. Now, if you were abused by these groups, they used on me what I'm telling you about. That's what they know when they're high up. Not everybody, they don't understand. People come into these groups, think it's a great social thing, and it's all, we worship God, Christian God. No. It's not to you. Right up the top, you know who they're really talking about. Their God is Lucifer, and all the other ancient, fallen angel gods and demigods. Anyway, so these things, these esoteric methods are used by the military. They're weaponized by the military. That's why Hitler went around and gathered all the information, the Buddhists and secret societies and, Tibetan monks and all these sorts of people. The Dalai Lama, who was brought over to Australia to teach me advanced astral projection, by the way, in about 1980 or something, in the 80s. All these things are weaponized by the military. And the way that you access this material that's been made implicit is to engage in therapies that speak to the right hemisphere. So those therapies are hypnosis, EMDR, bilateral stimulation. EMDR most certainly places you in an altered state of consciousness, and you can control how deep you go into the altered state with EMDR, with the tapping or the light bar or whatever. I can't do light bar. I've had a stroke, so I can't even look at a computer screen hurts my brain. But tapping or tapping, the TheraTappers would be good, because then you can standardise the rate at which they're working. You can actually go from alpha, preparation, relaxation, whatever, into theta, into delta through EMDR. And then, and another thing you can do, you can access the right hemisphere and retrieve the information just through guided mental imagery, visualization. And the very important thing is get someone into a very relaxed state, then an altered state, and you automatically won't freak out. The more relaxed you are, the more you go into an altered state, the less triggered you'll be, or whatever, it's automatic. And because people, therapists go, oh, you triggered, okay, I'll pull you out. The window of tolerance is bullshit by Dan Siegel, when he himself used fucking hypnosis on a client and doesn't tell you that. Go read the book, that his client wrote. Oh, we did this. It was like, now you're feeling relaxed and deeper. I'm going to count back and hypnosis. Anyway, the more relaxed you are, the more the right hemisphere's online and whatever, the less you're going to be, you don't need no window of tolerance, So, because if you keep waiting for a window of tolerance to, to be expanded and, people will stop being triggered, you'll never get anywhere in therapy. Never. And this is what I've met people 20, 30 years haven't got anywhere. So, because the main ideal is people like Dan Siegel go, oh yeah, we want you to integrate. No, you don't. You're not telling people how to do it. He'll have a snippet in his talks, and he's in control of Stephen Porges. He edited all his books. So, you get snippets at his talks, and I virtually watched the Oxford Trauma Conferences, 2 of them. Fucking biggest load of propaganda. But every now and then you saw something really good in those, and it wasn't the main speakers who said it. They'll give a hint of what I'm talking about, but they don't go there. And anyway, so you need to do this therapy. It's clay-filled therapy. I don't like Jung. He was a Rosicrucian Freemason, and all his stuff was just recycled esoteric Gnostic doctrine. And they worked in with Peter Levine, who I think Peter Levine's probably the pick of them. But still, they all control a part of the narrative. We're in charge of, if you have to do a new ending to the trauma and all this, and that's Peter Levine. Well, you can find this research in the military, find this same stuff written decades ago in the military research, everything these people peddle. And Schwartz, I hardly know his stuff, but he annoys me, bloody fire engines and shit or whatever he took, firemen. There's a load of crap. Anyway, you can find all of this stuff in the old research. So you need therapy where they place you in an altered state of consciousness, you do visualization, the most important thing that a therapist does with a client is step them through and activate as many sensory modalities as possible during the session. So, I invented my own methods, and so hard in Australia to get any therapy that worked. And you just got to make use with whatever idiot you're working with and hope you get a good one. And I end up with a good one. And a very good art therapist I had at one time. Anyway, I'll give an example. The final integration moment for me happened when I naturally learnt to visualize and to create a place where I stored parts. It was called the Kindergarten. It was based on a real place. And as I would, process a memory, and you must remember stuff. There is no such thing as processing if you don't remember what happened. And the brain will suggest what you're ready to deal with at the time. And people have to understand there's no guidebook, really, because every program was tailored to that individual, to their DNA, to their lived experiences, to how far back their trauma lineage goes, if they're second generation like me, MK, to what their roles are going to be. Are they just going to be prostituted? Are they going to be used for Delta? Are they assassins? Are they going to be the type you can train as assassins? All this sort of thing. So there's no such, and their IQ level, there's no such thing as one size fits all. But what is one size fits all is the therapy technique. And you have to trust that every victim of this shit, they in their own head hold the keys. They know what's happened to them. Their right hemisphere contains that information. And all you got to do is get the person on side and then work with that, get their trust. And if they think that the therapist knows what they're doing and is safe, then it's gonna happen. But my goodness, and the more complicated the matrix of programming, like mine started with Joseph Mengele, then oh my God, yeah, it's going to be a trip, right? But if I can do it, I think anyone can. Seriously, I had the full gamut of possibilities, and I'm telling you. And what it takes is, I must say, a benefit that I've had is I had one parent who wasn't crazy. So my father was completely crazy. Well, DID. I call it trauma-based forced association. DID doesn't cut it. That suggests it can happen organically, whatever. No, this is systematically created by the military, and where they've weaponized that natural ability to dissociate under trauma and other conditions. And if I can do it, I did have that advantage. Another advantage was, I must say, it was a very seamless system created by the pioneers of this stuff. And because it was clean and seamless, it wasn't messy to undo, really. It was also, I was a trained soldier, like an elite special forces soldier. So, and that the parts of me that were trained became very handy when I was undoing it all. So I was trained in military intelligence. I was trained in programming. And so I knew in my head very well what to do to undo it. And I just needed a therapist to listen. And it took so many years, decades, to find someone who would. And so that soldier training, what it does is most victims become fearful and they run. They give into the amygdala activation. And whereas a soldier will not run from bullets, they will run towards the source of firing. So I had that conditioned response in me. And I'm like, well, and I didn't care what people thought. I mean, when I was attacked, oh my God, I was humiliated and they tried to shame and embarrass me. And I just went, fuck you. I don't care what you say, right? Then the threat started and they pursued me and everything. And, you know, I'm scaling bloody walls and stuff, you know, in Sydney and whatever, when I was fit. And, but I'm like, fuck you, you know. Didn't matter. They gang stalked me. They sent like 20, 30 people after me in a hotel. Witnesses were there and saw it all. And, you know, ASIO T4 officers came after me and running after me and all that. I'm hiding and talking to the cops going, they're after me. Thanks a lot. When I went to make police statements in Sydney and stuff. So, you know, most victims are just curl up in a ball and die. I mean, really, they would. And therapists do say to me, oh, but you're different. And then victims say, oh, but you're a soldier, so, you know, it's different. It's like, no. If I had the soldier programming, that's way worse than what they did to create, you know, the child, you know, sex slave. Do you understand? So I'll give you an example. So when I was initiated into the Order of Dagon, I was taken, it's in the book, I was chained upside down at 12, lowered into this metal cylinder. It wasn't a cylinder, it was square. That was full of water and I was drowned. Now, that was pretty horrific. So you can say, oh, but you got to, you know. And then when they did the Lilith programming, they hooked me up to a water, like this water wheel thing, and drowned me, you know, spun and drowned me at the same time until my heart stopped. Now, you know, so you can say, oh, that's for the Order of Lilith. Now that, you know, you can say, oh, but, you know, oh, it's all right for you. You're a soldier, I get from MK Ultra victims. I go, oh, yeah, but look what happened to me. Now, if I've overcome all of this, you know, you can do this. I'm not saying it's fun. And the problem is, if you've had this level of trauma, then the innate fear when the amygdala goes off, and rightly so, is you fear dying. And fair enough, it is the most horrific sensation. I'd shoot me before I ever have to go through that again. And I did nearly die in therapy when I had to process the Lilith stuff. Yeah, the being spun and flatlined and drowned to flatlining. It was horrific, and you know, it was just horrible. So, you know, when I talk about this, I'm coming from that perspective, and I'm telling you what works, what worked for me. So the final integration session really was when I was doing Clayfield therapy, which is amazing. I recommend it. It'll be able to access some of those proprioceptive memories. I did that, the body memories, you know, and I had David Grund bilateral music on. He's the one who did the brain spotting stuff. And it was it was one of his pieces, not the others, and it was phenomenal. It was like a classical ballet piece with a nice rhythm that suited going into a trance state. The art therapist did EMDR a bit, clumsily, but enough. And then I visualized. And I went in and working in the clay, and I went, like all programming is laid interdimensionally in this setting that I'm talking about. So originally they'd put you at age 3 in a sensory deprivation tank. You'd have unethical hypnosis through a loudspeaker thing. You'd be given psilocybin or whatever, LSD, and you know, sensory deprivation and everything. And I'm telling you now, it was laid interdimensionally. So you'd go into a place was just as real as where we are now. And I've got an article on my website that explains about what the Kabbalistic tree of life is that all Gnostic secret societies use. Each of those 10 sephira is an interdimensional location used for astral projection. So, and you can buy these tuning forks, and that key is how you access each dimension. So when they lay the core programming, when Mengele did it with John C. Lilly's, and he was one of my direct perps, John C. Lilly's sensory deprivation tank, they lay the core that I've got, those manganese core. I've got a pentagram on my website, on one of the articles. They lay it in interdimensionally. And so your average therapist, how are they going to be able to deal with that stuff? So basically you can retrieve it. So when I did the final integration thing, I had all this happening and I visualized myself. Visualization must be so detailed. You know, what do you smell? What do you see? How are your feet? Look up, look left, look right, do a 360, exactly, very detailed. And that's how you access the memory. So I'm in this, so I've got the bilateral music going on in my ear through headphones. I've had EMDR tapping. I'm working the clay, which was phenomenal. And I remember it was warm and slushy and stuff. And I was doing rhythmic movements with my hand, and I'm hearing the music, and then I'm visualizing, and I go into my place, into my, the children's garden that I created, and all my parts come out and start dancing. And then we're dancing in unison. And it was phenomenal. I get teary. And everybody's in their outfits that you recognise. But then all the dancers came out, because I was a very good dancer when I was young. And then a part I'd never met before, the dancer comes out and is leading it. And one moment I'm looking at it, then I'm actually in it and I can see it and I'm moving, just like as if we're in real life. Yeah. So, and then I'm dancing and whatever. And it was like everyone dancing in unison. And that was the moment of integration, final integration. That was the end. That was it. And that was after I had, processed and remembered all the other parts, that are in the pentagram the Eastern Star that I put up. So my core, the core splits are up there if you can find them. They're not in the book, but so what I want to talk, that's what I wanted to do was, and you need to create a new ending. You need to edit the emotion out of the memory. You need to bring the memory up. It's like exposure therapy. You need to, and you can do it very quickly. If you try and do therapy via the left brain, then it's repetition. The left brain learns according to repetition and remembers according to repetition. The right hemisphere is immediate. It processes interdimensionally. That's why they chose gifted kids who, when they do math, they don't show the working out. And they go, you ask them, how'd you do that? They go, because they did it interdimensionally. So, and then that's what your AI computers are based on. These quantum computers, they process interdimensionally. The people who created them will tell you that, or they have told you in TED Talks, etc. So this is the key. And what won't help you is electrocution. Anything that speaks to the left brain, like talk therapies. There's no point. Your right hemisphere doesn't have language. It is capable of processing advanced language and doing advanced mathematical computations and that. But in this context, if it hasn't been processed, if the information hasn't been processed through the hippocampus, which is activated by theta beats, then it's not going to be able to be spoken of. So this whole process I'm talking about will then allow you to see what happened. Then the information is placed through the hippocampus into the left brain for time, date, place stamping, for context. And it strips the emotion. You got to process the emotion and what they did and whatever. And I'm telling you now, if you process each memory or various aspects of the same memory that way, you will never, ever be triggered by it again. You won't be, because it's been yeah. And there's a book you can buy in America called The Encyclopedia of Hypnosis by Carla Emery. It's $5 for you Americans. They're selling them for $1,500 online. They're liquidating them because the author died. Lovely woman, and she wrote the most amazing book. So if you go and get that will tell you the role of hypnosis. The secret to all of this, and what no one's talking about, is how they used hypnosis. It's a conditioned reflex. You will not remember. If somebody uses a trigger to place you in an altered state using hypnosis techniques, you will not remember what just happened. You will not remember. So, and the way that you do remember is to talk about it, to talk about what happened. You've got to then you have to verbalize it. That's what undoes the programming. So you have to retrieve it from the right brain, contextualize it in the left, so you can talk about it, and the spell is broken. Does that make sense?
It does. And I wanted to ask you a question about triggers. We have a lot of new survivors that have had this government level programming, and part of that is self-harm programs, suicide programming.
Oh, yeah. It's
what advice would you give to survivors to be equipped to do that?
Well, in America, you might have better facilities in America. There's nothing in Australia. You need to be, when that's really triggered, you really need to be in a locked facility. You need to have staff, a team around you who understand what's happened while they undo it, ideally. Because I used to tell myself, when the Amiga programming hit, I used to tell myself, these are not my words. These are not my thoughts. This is not my will here. This is some pedo bastard imposed their will on me to create this. This is foreign. This is not my doing. And it'll be fixed, cemented in there with guilt and shame and all that sort of thing. Another thing that has to be touched on is the spiritual aspect. The entities that these esoteric societies, secret societies worship, the ancient deities, they are interdimensional entities. They're what's in your computers, our computers. And when you go to rituals and they appear and all this sort of thing, the Bible calls them demons and evil spirits and things. They are the offspring of humans who mated with fallen angels. Now, they are the gods that are worshipped, and the demigods and whatever. Now, when they have to be dealt with, because they are disembodied spirits looking for bodies, and they can get into a human body. They can inhabit. And what they did was, with every near-death experience, that's what they do. Everything was cemented in with one of these entities. So, Dagon, comics, Aquaman, Lilith and Diana or whatever, comic, Wonder Woman, this sort of thing. So every time you'd watch cartoons and everything, it reinforced the programming, Batman and Joker and Catwoman and all this sort of stuff. They're actually, you trace them back, and they're actually the gods that these societies worship up the top, yeah. So you have to deal with those spiritually. Now, you cannot deal with those through shamanism, clairvoyance, calling on your spirit guides and that. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. And I say this as someone who was the Grand Dame in Australia. All right, it's not going to work. That what got me out, and I said before, what got me out, I was soldier trained. I was, I had one sane parent, but I was a born-again Christian at 15. That's how I really got out. Right, and I didn't get out for years. Escaped certain levels of things at certain ages, and then they came and kidnapped me again. When I was 18, and I went down. Because I went to study in Sydney. That was a mistake. Anyway, things like that. So, that the only power that I saw, the only thing that I ever saw that freaked these people out was when, and this is how I got out on the spiritual level. From the cult side of it, resigned as Grand Dame, which you can't really, because to become Grand Dame, you've got to breathe in the dying breath of the last Grand Dame. And so, so they're screwed. So now they've got to bring another Grand Dame in who's breathed in the last breath of another Grand Dame somewhere in the world. So it's like really not cool for them. Anyway, I was mid-ritual in beneath in one of the crypts in one of the Catholic churches in Sydney, and I'm telling you now, a big light flooded the room. These room full of these Satanists, Luciferians, some high ranking or whatever, hit the deck, and they're clawing through the stone ground to get out. They're screaming and like this. And then this voice came out of the light and it was Jesus saying, "Fiona, do you choose to do this?" "No, help me, Jesus." This after I become a Christian. And then I just dropped everything and I ran out the door and I the guards were disabled. They weren't there. And I ran up down the street and I ran straight into the open door of a Christian family, robes and everything, and just went in there and said, pray. They were watching telly and I said, pray. And, and then when I had to go to, there was a big meeting of the Grand Council at, that's on the tip of my tongue. There's a hall at the University of Sydney. And because the University of Sydney housed the OTO in Australia, the first Chancellor of the University of Sydney introduced OTO to Australia, and the OTO headquarters were always situated at Sydney Uni in the Wentworth building, student services. They're demolishing the building, like everything else I've mentioned. They're demolishing or selling it or whatever. But like ABC Studios in Sydney and that. Anyway, when I had to go before the Grand Council, and I had to say, look, I'm out of here, and I had to give my argument like in a court of law. And in the end of the day, I said, well, you told me all powerful, all knowing, all this, all that. I said, tell me, what was that in that room? If you're all so powerful, you told me, the gods you worship, that's the source of powerful. Lucifer's all powerful and all this sort of thing, all present, all knowing, whatever. Who was that, guys? And they had no answer. I said, well, I'll tell you what, let me know when you've got an answer. Until then, I'm out of here. And so they didn't get me again till I was how old was I then? 15. That was 15 to 16. I'd just been to the Bathurst. I'd been treated like shit. So once the Grand Dame was dead and I took a place at 14, then it was hell for me for the next year or so. I was treated like shit by Kidman, no respect, raped. I said, hey, I was supposed to be treated with respect from now on. This is the role. And these men were horrible and jealous, and everyone else wanted someone else. Antony wanted his daughter to be the Grand Dame and all this sort of stuff. So everyone had him guts particularly. And they were jealous and whatever and attacked me. And then I said, look, you treated me like shit. I'm out of here. And then, of course, for the military, how I got out of the military sort of thing, well, temporarily until they kidnapped me, but at 16 I was flying a Cessna, and they had all these kids. I didn't know the kids were all chained to the seats, and they sabotaged the landing feet, and it sunk in shallow water, and the kids all drowned. And I had a choice. I could rescue one, and she drowned anyway. And I was so angry. I turned up at Holsworthy, on the grounds of Holsworthy, the CIA end, Delta Force end training area. And there was a couple of Delta guys with me and Victor Chan. And by now I was like a veteran. I'd served so much. And at 14, I'd done all this big stuff overseas. And I was teaching at Holsworthy, the up-and-coming people. And as the Grand Dame, my job was to start training up the kids, the next generation and stuff, when they came for lessons at Holsworthy and that. Anyway, I just went off at Victor Chan and just abusing the shit out of him. And I just got in his face about how weak and pathetic I was, about what happened to the kids and how sick he was and everything. He pulled a knife on me, and I just deflected the knife with my left hand, punched him in the throat with the right. He was in hospital for it, and then kneed him in the nuts for good measure and dropped him like a sack of shit. And the two guys with me like this. And and I said to the guys, listen, and I spoke to them and whatever, and I said, listen, you have to now go and do what we do. Just know underneath you can get out of this stuff and you can break through. So they took me in, and I was dishonourably discharged, treated like a traitor and everything, and they threw me in this refrigerated room and threw water on me, and got a phone book kick you in the gut type thing, and all this stuff was dreadful and terrible, when they're your team and your family, and then didn't have much to do with them until they kidnapped me at 18, when I went down to study in Sydney, and then I left after a year. That's why I left after a year and transferred to a uni in Brisbane. And so this stuff is real. I mean, there are bases in England. There was the Lock, Holy Lock base, submarine base. I had experiences there to do with the Leviathan programming. I was brought on for a particular thing there. I was, what else did we do? Nicaragua, had chopper crash. I've got a massive scar across my knee, which I didn't realise was there until therapy. During lockdown, we're doing heavy therapy and whatever. And then after that, I was doing therapy on the chopper crash for years, and then looked down one day at my knee mid-therapy and I went, oh my God, there's a scar this long, half my knee. And I had never seen it. That's how dissociated I was from it through the hypnosis and everything. And then I've got this massive scar, and it's like, So where they reconstructed it after a chopper crash, and I just destroyed my knee, and I flatlined on the table and everything in surgery, and I got this beautiful scar, but nonetheless, it's a scar. Anyway, all sorts. I was used for, what else do the arseholes do? Terrible things. Italy assassinated a beautiful judge and wife and 2 young children Christmas Eve when I was 14. SEAL Team 6 dropped me off. All sorts. Yeah, so I was very, Stargate's real. We led the first successful team for Stargate. Yeah, that's in the book. And then they bring out a movie to make people go, oh, it's all fiction. No, it wasn't. I was given a medal for that, Medal of Honor, and we were stood we were at the Pentagon in the room with all the seats and the stage, and attended a briefing, and the Jason group's scientists were all there, and Rumsfeld, before he was a big guy, and Powell was there, and our commander was Jerry Boykin. The guy who took on a role at Focus on the Family is just so evil. He's evil. Anyway, he was our Delta commander. So within Delta, there was, when I was in Delta, I was Alice. So I was part of Project Alice. And there were 3 Jasons. They were called Jason 1, Jason 2, Jason 3, as in Jason Bourne. So your Delta Force soldiers are all Jasons in the field, like for these really top black ops. And so we worked as a team, and at the end of every mission, I had to bump off my team. That's how you kept it secret. Yeah. So if you can imagine bonding with these people, some people, like one guy, my favourite from age 6, I was 14. I come back and I was training on the mat, and that piece of shit, Commander Boykin, was there, and, I'd finished my training in the farm in America, and I come back and I was like so weaponized, and we're sparring on the mat, and then this one guy that I loved like a brother, I think I dislocated his shoulder or something, and then Boykin comes over to the drinks trolley and says, finish him off. And like, when I remember that, it's the first time I ever cried in therapy, and I just broke. Went to his funeral, had a lovely, I remember his young wife dressed in red, and I had to be there, and it was fucked up. And it was just, I wasn't allowed to have anyone I was fond of. I can't have any weaknesses. And they sexually bond you within the Delta team, so everyone would have sex, whatever, because you're bonded. And they do that between all the special forces, like Israeli military intelligence and whatever. They'll assemble teams, and they're all bonded. All your Marines right up the top are bonded that way. And SEAL 6, their final graduation project is go and commit an assassination, rando assassination somewhere in America. Yeah, it's all pretty evil. It's all to do with pedophilia and trafficking and whatever. So child trafficking is run as a single integrated global operation coordinated primarily by the CIA. But everyone is answerable to MI6. So British military intelligence created CIA. They created ASIO and ASIC in Australia. So they are the head of the snake, and the family at the top of them is the Rothschilds, and they're not even human. They've got more bloody Nephilim in them than human. So they're not even Jewish. People blaming. I hate it. I don't even want to say that word because people blaming these bankers, and parroting what Hitler said and everything. These people are not even human, okay? So they're the ones, the Rosicrucians are their elite, and the Rosicrucian Freemasons are the elite secret society that the Rothschilds head. And you've got to be a bloodliner to be in the Rosicrucians. Anyone can join the others, but not that one. And the Illuminati, it's something else. But yeah, these monsters. So you've got the Rothschilds who run it all. The Rothschilds, you know, age 12, I was over in America, and I was dropped off, and I don't know why, Delta had a presence with my team at the Playboy Mansion with Hugh Hefner. He was a Epstein. He was the old Epstein, and we running the human compromise, thing from that. What young bloke wouldn't want to go and see Playboy bunnies at a party at Hugh Hefner's house? Next thing they're drugged and having sex with a 14-year-old that looks, 20. Anyway, I was dropped off, and I was collected by. I went to some cocktail party in that Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort was there. Now when I was 12, it's about 81, 82 or something. He was a gopher for the Rothschilds. This is where he came up, and like Epstein said in the files, I represent the Rothschilds. So when my friend Annika Lucas, she named the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, who are Rothschilds anyway, they're all the same sort of relatives. He dropped me off at a hit north of New York City. It was beside a lake, this house, I can remember it, and I went in and did this guy over, but then Belfort then decided to rape me in the car. So that's not, he's a pedo. Well, he's just disgusting being. So anyway, so that's the sort of thing I was taken over to do. They'd fly us between military airports, didn't need a passport, nothing. I'd go on CIA planes or whatever, be flown between bases around the world, and, for whatever. I was called in for certain jobs. One time there was a woman, poor young woman, she would have been in her 30s, lovely family and everything, and they were trying to get her to break. Her teeth were all broken. She'd been raped, beaten up and everything in this hut in the desert somewhere. And they were trying to get some codes out of her or whatever. And I just went in, I told everyone leave. And I said, I sat down and said, look at me. This is what they did to me. And I showed them the family. I said, I promise you, your husband and kids will be untouched, but you got to cough up. And she coughed up the info, and then I just shot her in the head because, but, we used to go in and go in, and like there was a time I was dropped off in Tuscany, and we went up to because the CIA, were run all the mafias and drug trafficking in the world, and we went up to someone who'd done the wrong thing, and it was some mafia boss or someone, and it was a baby shower, and there was this lovely baby shower with these women in the pregnant mum, had a yellow dress on and all this sort of that. We went up there and we were dropped off we parachuted in off a distant hill. We went up, climbed up over the walls, gunned everyone down at the baby shower, and balloons and presents and whatever, and cakes and stuff. And then we were chased by dogs, and we jumped over the wall, and I hurt myself, running back to the collection point, whatever. This is the shit I did. That was 14 again. A lot of stuff happened when I was 14. It was the optimal age, horrific, used as pilots. There are other Americans that were used as pilots I couldn't find the book again, but I don't know if they were two Mormon girls used as pilots or whatever, but girls were the best pilots because of how our brains are wired compared to males. We're women are more emotional. We live in our right hemispheres a bit more than men. Men are more logical and reasoning, and want evidence and solution focused, whereas we just go with it. And so they wanted kids who had very high visual spatial IQs. That's why hence all the IQ testing. Visual spatial IQ, because if you put a kid in just say you're testing someone, and you throw them in a functional MRI and you give them problems to solve like math or whatever, tests show people of average IQ, just the left side of the brain lights up, but gifted kids, both hemispheres light up. Yeah, while performing cognitive tasks, yeah. So that's what the military wanted. That's why they test for IQ. And IQ's inherited. It's hereditary. You know, you can't turn a frog into an Ivy League scholar. You know, you have to be born with the right IQ to develop it. So, yeah, so this is the horrors that I live with, you know, and I live with the physical injuries, being injected in the lower spine by radioisotopes and having a bloody growth there, you know, because you don't do that to teenagers. They don't, you know, you only do that to adults because they're going to get cancer before they die otherwise. They caused a brainstem stroke where they injected me with they used a hot needle to sear they did something with a hot needle at the base of my skull. I had a stroke there in 2009, January. And I live with that disability every day, you know. My eyes, I've been on the computer a week and it's given me migraines and nausea and vertigo and everything. What else is there? Anyway, there's my rant. Got any questions?
Oh, I have so many questions. I think you would be a good person to answer this question. Disney gets brought up a lot, and I see comments sometimes on my videos like, what does Disney have to do with MK Ultra? And I wanted to ask you that, if maybe you could explain the relationship, what it has to do with programming.
Everything. It was developed and the cartoons created and the place built specifically for MK Ultra programming. Like I said, look when Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson started their research. Decades and decades before psychedelics, you know, people think psychedelics were being researched. Decades, long, hypnosis and that, long before. It's a programming site, and it's a site of child abduction. I hate these stories, but I know of 2 separate families who don't know each other. Their blue-eyed blonde children were abducted, Australian children abducted, and the police didn't do anything. Arnhem Police and everything are all part of it all. It's a trafficking, child abduction centre. Look at all the tunnels. Look how many pedos work there and have been busted, just minor pedos. Walt Disney was a notorious pedo, you know. Club 33, that's where Ted Turner gambled for me in a poker game and won me and raped me out the back. Yeah, they had rooms there. Club 33 had an old bar and timber and whatever, you know. Yeah, the whole thing was a pedo's playground. Pedos would be entertained there and children being raped. That's where they went for fun and took the kids on rides and would have closed the park at night and do whatever you want. And, programming. So all Fantasia is a programming movie. That's all it ever was. All the ancient scripts are programming scripts. You know, Wizard of Oz is a programming script. You know, from Oz, Osiris, and it's ancient script handed down through the secret societies and the Rosicrucians and that. You know, most of your stuff, you know, feature ancient deities and they're repackaged as fun cartoon characters. You know. Ugh. So it's just so that every time you see the movie, your programming's reinforced. That's what it does. So you've got to watch telly all the time. Bewitched, Sabrina, you know. Everyone had Bewitched parts and Sabrina and whatever. And then I Dream of Jeannie, you know. Grew up watching that shit, reinforced the programming. Peter Pan reinforces the programming. Pan, the boys often had the Pan programming. Girls would have maybe Wendy. You know, Cinderella, my God. Snow White, my goodness. Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty. I had parts, all of those. So they're all used, you know. And for Grand Dame programming, a lot of the princess programming is the Illuminati stuff, very important for Grand Dame stuff. You know, all the Wicked Witches. You know, you start off as the princess, you become the perpetrator, you become the Wicked Witch at the end, dressed in purple and black, and you know, and then you got the dragon, the Ouroboros dragon, you know, in the woods, and the princess fighting through to get you. You know, there's all these themes, and the Wicked Witch dies, and the cycle continues because the upcoming princess, the Grand Dame candidate, kills the Wicked Witch, and the cycle continues. It's just all programming. It's like the first programmers were Lion Witch and the Wardrobe was a program that I had, and Lord of the Rings. That's a lot of boys have that one. Lord of the Rings programming. They were all in the Inklings, and they were all in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Those authors, and they're all pedophiles. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland, pedophile. All those naked pictures that he had of kids and was in love with a 9-year-old named Alice and all this shit. It's all the same shit. Alice in Wonderland. I mean, that's all my Alice programming was set in a Alice in Wonderland setting. And then they can use the sets, and this is what they did at ABC Studios in Sydney. They would reproduce the sets. So I had Mengele and Antony Kidman. We had a set, and this is horrific, but they had dead kids dressed up as puppets, and the puppet scene in Pinocchio. Oh, yeah. And they had me on stage with that shit. And, I'm a puppet on a string, and they sing the music and all the... So every time I saw that movie, it reinforced that shit. And that was Kidman and Mengele that day. Yeah. I was 3 and Mengele was 60 when I met him. He used to have a thing underneath... he had the military owned, he had a lab, and there used to be a bioweapons lab, and he did all the experiments with chimeras crossing apes and humans and stuff in the Milson Island in the middle of the Hawkesbury River. He had a lab there, and Pete Island facility was right nearby, and Kidman, they used to do terrible atrocities to kids, and it was in mainstream news, finding kids with things missing off them and whatever. And then he had a lab underneath the US Embassy in Canberra. So all your embassies around the world will use, your diplomats are all CIA agents, it's all just, and traffickers and UN trafficking and UN headquarters was busted as a child prostitution brothel back in 1992, late 91 or early 92, but I was told about it in 92 by the person who had something to do with it. That world. So, programming, all programming, they reproduced the Wizard of Oz set in Sydney. That was ABC Studios probably. They used ABC Studios. We had a very famous show here called Playschool. I think they aired something like it in England as well. And John Hamblin was an MI6 import who was used... So he raped me on my grandmother's table when I was 3 in front of Kidman, Wendy Louise Walker. And then, so every time I saw him on telly at Playschool, everyone watched Playschool in the 70s, then my program's reinforced every time I saw this piece of shit. And then they used me on the set of Playschool. They used a set or, reproduction set, whatever, and all the, toys, and they did a Christmas kiddie snuff porn special, and I just saw kids slaughtered around me under a fucking Christmas tree. And that's ABC Studio Sydney. And this is why the ABC attacked me. They're our government propaganda mouthpiece, yeah. So the whole point is, so it reinforces kids. Music, they use music. Every time you hear something on the radio, every time you hear your favourite song, or not favourite song, like Funky Town, or what else did they use for me, then it's reinforcing the programming. That's why they use all these bands. Look at the P. Diddy case. You couldn't become anyone in that music world unless P. Diddy raped you or compromised you or whatever, or any of that. The whole music world, look at them all,
100%.
Acting, Hollywood, same shit. Yeah. No one becomes, and Meryl Streep was the grand dame of Hollywood. She was very high up in the esoteric societies. She was the grand dame of that West Coast of Hollywood area. That's why they call her openly the grand dame of Hollywood. They just fly it in your face. She's there doing this, all in the photos and everything. I've got some in the book. She was a piece of work. Look at her. Oh, and I'd like to thank God, Harvey Weinstein at the Oscars. Why do you think she says that? They're all the same. Not all of them. I've had, you get your, look, there's someone I know in Australia, a child actor who is friends with Hollywood former child actors, you know, there's some good Hollywood. I'm not saying every bloody actor in Hollywood. They know, the ones who've grown up with it, whose parents were actors or whatever, they've seen it all. And but the child actors, they tell the same story, all the same stuff that I've said, they say, you know. So you've got to feel sorry for them when they've been raised. Poor Britney Spears, my God.
Oh my gosh.
But she came out a while ago and said a lot of stuff about MK Ultra and whatever. That was some years back. She was saying it. So, you know, what was she about to say, or what had she been triggered to say when they arrest her again? Yeah, righto. Poor Britney, you know. She's innocent, I'm sure. Mickey Mouse kids, oh my God, all those Mickey Mouse kids were all, imagine what happened to them. They've all been MK Ultra. You couldn't, you know, all of them. Justin and, you know, all that. Ryan, they're all victims. Yeah. Poor Michael Jackson, you know, all of them. And some go on to abuse and some don't. Some break out, some fight, some don't fight. Some go on to round them up, round kids up for the ring. I mean, you know, I'm not judging anyone. I mean, geez, I know how hard it is to get through it all, and not really. I still got. Oh, by the way, I'm not right. I might not have, you know, that structure has been shattered, but I still have extreme PTSD. You know, I still duck when choppers fly over my house. You know, I'm still triggered like any soldier. And but I must say too, for those who go, I've actually got soldiers who have signed legal documents saying yes, they know about the child soldier program in Australia, or yes, they, you know, well, one was watching, was friends with Wendy Louise Walker and Keith Dawes. Wendy Louise was one of my big handlers who trained under Martin Orr in 1960 at Sydney Uni, and she was the head of the Hypnosis Society in Australia and lectured at Sydney Uni. They saw me I think 2016, 15. They saw me in the Sydney press conference, 15, I think. And they tried to help me, apparently, had a change of heart in their old age, and they died the next year straight after. She tried to write these research papers trying to help me, and then these other pieces of shit who died soon after as well, who were in the False Memory Foundation, that in Australia, and APS presidents and that, they stopped the articles from being published. So, but apparently they allude to the child subjects, you know, that they used in the hypnosis experiments, and that were the backbone of the publications, research publications in Australia. Anyway, she said they recognised me from the press conference on telly, and he signed a document for lawyers saying that. He was there. They said, she's one of our kids from Holsworthy. Yep. And he saw kids in cages and stuff as well in the military, like as when he was, but he can't talk about some of it because he signed the Secrecy Act. So a lot of them, if they've signed Secrecy Act or non-disclosures, they're not allowed to talk about it. So it's like my friend William Bowser, who died within weeks after writing the foreword to my new book, and Order of Australia Medal. You know, I said to him one day, he basically wrote the intelligence manual for Australia's intelligence, you know, military intelligence group, and he was SAS, Vietnam vet, and all that. He wrote, when I said to him one day, I said, no, I just want you to write. I said, what is it? What is it? I'd never thought to ask. I said, what was it? What is it about what makes you think I'm a child soldier? That's what I want to be. What convinced you that this is true? And so he wrote the foreword. And I'd said, what did you see, Bill? What did you see? Did you see evidence of me being a child soldier? And he snapped at me and said, that's enough. No more questions. First time he got angry at me in all the years I knew him. So he couldn't talk. Even his wife, he'd never tell her anything. And they'd joke. She'd ask something, he'd go, well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, haha. So these guys, they take it to the grave. So, yeah, big court-martial for you if you, I think it's like death penalty if you breach some of the stuff that you've signed. bring up what we should do. Go to my website, bring up the article on the Mengelay's Kabbalistic Eastern Star. Bring that up on and then I will, and then you'll scroll down through it, and I'll explain it, because I think it's important if people realise this is the fundamental programming structure of all survivors of this level, and then they can, it'll be variation on a theme, and I'll explain a few things about the structure. Okay, so we need to talk about this article. Now take it down, so it will start on here. So bring the start, that. Just stay there. Make sure everyone can see it.
There we go.
Okay, and what's the writing above that I above? No, just scroll up.
Oh,
okay,
right here.
So we'll start with that writing. When first formed, the Order of the Eastern Star features the names of 5 goddesses as follows.
Okay.
And this is what a lot of this is female programming. So I think this might help other survivors. I like to call them victims of crime, because, let's face it, is Virginia a survivor? No. Victim. So Kabbalah, Eastern Star, and MK Ultra. This is something I wrote to help everyone, and this is the fundamental structure of all MK Ultra based programming, is this configuration. And for females, this is a female one, and because a lot of your MK victims who come forward are female. So anyway, so I say this comes from all these secret societies, the ancient orders. So when it was first formed, as I say, I can't read this. I'm getting a bit of a headache looking at bright things. When first formed, the Order of the Eastern Star symbol featured names of 5 goddesses as follows, right? So show us the star in its entirety. So this is the original Order of the Eastern Star. Okay, so bring up that. Okay, so you've got these 5 parts, and then you've got the dark one in the middle. So Luna, Flora, Hebe, Thesis. Oh, I can't read that. Irene. Anyway, these are different goddesses. This is how it was presented at the start, right? In the olden days, when they had the female division of the Freemason orders and whatever. Now, I've done a little bit of research here and linked all of this when I was in a dissociative state, right? When I could go into the Alice state. Now I'm just dumb. Anyway, so if you scroll down, then it changed soon after a bit of backlash. So 28 years later, I'll go to the writing just above there, what I've said.
Oh.
So 28 years after the Order of the Eastern Star was formed, its founder changed the names of the goddesses to something that better appealed to and could hide within our Judeo-Christian culture. So 5 biblical characters. So if you scroll down a bit, and this is how these people hide things, right? So then you start getting closer to what it really is. And then I've described, Ruth, Esther, Martha, Electa, and Ada, and whatever, right? In the Bible, characters and their characteristics. And so they've loosely overlaid them. Then you get down to the real crux of it. This is the real one. Keep going. That they use. Now, show me the next one. So now here's the previous unpublished secret that I said. The Order of the Eastern Star pentagram characters perfectly match the initial MK Ultra program splits created by Mengelay. So show us this one. Now, this is going to be the fundamental core splits that are used in any MK Ultra programming, but it's just tailored to the individual. So where the white is, I was in the Illuminati, okay? So that's all Illuminati stuff. And if you're not in the Illuminati, you're not going to have that one. The Lilith stuff, that's the basis of all your military programming there. You might have assassin training there or something like that, okay? But if you're not totally in the military, it's not going to be the same. So you've got there, Lilith was the military, basic military one. And then below, then you'll have offshoots from Lilith. So next thing, built upon the core there, you'll have all these different, similar structures. You'll have the, Dagon, and then you'll have Leviathan, right? They'll all be in that one. Then you've got Rosicrucian Rose. So this is the order, part. So any of your ritual stuff and your sacrifices and learning of all the chants and Yeah, all the theory to do with being, well, Grand Dame and all that's all there, right? But those two work together very closely. But then you've got Dorothy. Now, Dorothy, that's the original Wizard of Oz Dorothy. That's the core. Now, that can be Alice in there as well. Now, when Antony Kidman screwed up when I was 10, and then Gidding was called over from America and he had to fix things. And so he, I nearly died. I ran and threw myself over a cliff after they asked me to do this Sophie's Choice dilemma and choose between who lives, this one or this one, and both kids were thrown over. And Ivan Milat was there. He threw the kids over, and he's a very famous serial killer who used to work for these people. Anyway, he actually saved my life by, football scrum threw himself against me. And then they had to fix it because Dorothy was now defunct and useless, and they replaced with Alice. So Alice, Dorothy kind of interchangeable. But anyway, Alice would be another from the Dorothy arm of this pentagram. And then you've got, well, Belle, there's all your princess programming and stuff and your prostitution programming. All right. So you as in the trained to please, whatever. So, and then in the middle, I had the gatekeeper, which was Angel, which was Mengele's non-verbal part, but had access to the other parts. So if you can get that middle one on side, that helps open up everything else. But look, good luck, And there's no set pattern to undoing all of this except that I've not actually sat down and been able to figure that out. I haven't had time, to really do all that. And I'm under time pressure. I mean, it's more important that I bloody write the book, really. But if you scroll down now, let's get to the whole structure when you look at it, keep going down on the bottom left, okay? Now, that in its 3D form, when it's in its 3D form, is more, you can see online. I think I've got a picture. Keep going down. Yeah, there's the forks, and that's the structure, and it tells you these are the interdimensional locations that the whole point of these, when you join these secret societies, is they incrementally release a bit of information, and and this is how you do this, and you go, oh, that actually works, there's something true to all of this and that, but they'll never let you right in all the way unless you're born into it, unless you're a bloodliner. One of the groups. So, and everyone's struggling to make it up the ladder and everything. They'll never make it to the top unless they're born into the top. So keep going down. Don't know if there's anything. Yeah, there you go. That's the structure there. That's it. That's your structure. That's my structure, what I saw. So, but to sit down and work it all out any more than this, God, And this is how they knew. See, they know about the left versus the right hemispheric processing, left brain, right brain. They knew this is ancient knowledge. This is what they keep from you in universities and neuroscience courses and psychiatry courses and that. No one's taught any of this. This is all fundamental stuff, So anyway, so if everybody, these are the basics of, there's your structure. So everything's going to be based on this stuff. You're going to have some element of that.
And this is right on Fiona's blog. I'll have it.
Yeah, it's one of the few articles that I've got up there. I took everything down when they tried to kill me. And my mum said, "Get that stuff down. They're coming for you." I went, "Yeah, Mum, okay, they were. They were going through a phase when they were just setting people up and shooting them and stuff in Australia and whatever. And I'm not going to talk about it, but I was linked to some of that, and they were coming for me, and so all I had to do at that time was breach legislation, say one thing online and everything, and they would have come for me. So there's different times when they're more active and who's in government and what they're busy with, and busy with the war at the moment. So who knows? And the Epstein files that come out, what was anyone going to fucking say? Holy crap! Everything I said is now people are online going, oh, I've got a few apologies I've got to make to my conspiracy nut friends that I ditched. all in there. It's horrid. It's not all in there. Let's face it, it's not all in there.
No,
Oh,
it's
God.
not.
Like gaslighting, there's hints of things. I mean, I'm sure I'm in the original files. All I am in these files are some articles I wrote in 2014. I found those. But, yeah.
So I wanted to ask, you mentioned something earlier that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. It's a big part of a lot of testimonies, but it seems to be an afterthought with a lot of knowledge that people have of this. And that is these obscure situations such as human hunting, and then also things like snuff pornography that children are used for. And these things can be so unbelievable for people to hear little snippets of it. And I wanted to know if you could maybe explain why, or rather what these things are and why they're used in programming.
Well, I think just generally, I mean, I think it's part of the honeypot human compromise operation that the military run. And it's really to ensnare politicians and businessmen and billionaires and entertainers and whatever. It's for their pleasure, a lot of it, and the royal families. It's an ancient hobby of theirs, hunting humans for sport. Well, it's much more fun hunting a human, isn't it? More challenging than hunting for deer or a fox. I mean, you know, yeah, they're monsters. Yeah, sort of Hunger Game style things that they got set up. The elites have set up on their islands and stuff. So I think it's for their pleasure, for the elites' pleasure. And it's just another way of traumatizing a child. Every trauma for someone like an MK victim had to be novel. So learning, for your brain to store something, new learning, it must be novel. There must be an element of surprise involved for the brain to store it in memory. And this was a good way of, just another way of doing that. So they did a teddy bear hunt at Bohemian Grove that I was dressed up in, and, they would kill some of the kids or rape them and kill them or whatever. Of course, I never got killed because, they wanted me alive, of course. But there were child hunts in Sydney. I was involved in one of those on my birthday. And then I wrote an article which was stolen in part by the Washington Post about the Poindexter hunting ranch somewhere. And that judge was murdered while he was there. David Shooter's got my article online, if you can find it. I had all that up, but yeah, whatever. I had to take it all down. And I was tired. I was sick of it all. Yeah, so that's all about, the hunt. They all are hooked, connected to Bohemian Grove, because there's a lot of child hunting. Bohemian Grove is a child hunting club as well, and so they'll have branches of their club. It's not just Bohemian Grove. There's a club in the city somewhere, and then they organise things as well. Part of there. Yeah, so it's to traumatise the kids and for pleasure of the adults, the perps. Yeah, there's that. What was the other thing you asked? What else was there? There was that, and snuff films. Well, same thing. Exact same thing. Traumatise the kids involved. Silence. I mean, who the hell are you going to tell anyone about when you see that happen? It's very hard to overcome the fear of disclosure when you've seen that shit. I have to explain the writing on the wall, where I've done a bit of a Rain Man on the wall. It's like the wall's coming down. I told my husband I needed a whiteboard, and that was my way of saying, look, when I was working out theories and stuff. So he said, why don't you just put some red cord and photos and Epstein, like this police crime scene map thing.
Yeah.
So if I had time, it would have been funny.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, just me making a point. You didn't get me a whiteboard today when you came home.
Another question I had for you that seems to be somewhat frequent in governmental mind control testimonies
Yeah.
is the relationship between these programs and then relating to another disclosure movement, which involves aliens, UFOs, advanced technology. Have you had experiences with those, or what's the relationship between those things?
Yeah, that shit's all real on one level. Basically, it's military, the whole lot, and military connected. So you've got your... So, yeah, I encountered some of that stuff at Dulcie and Holsworthy underground. You do have your entities and the gods, Dagon, that they worship. The military brass worship Dagon and these bases. And that shit's real. Yeah, like I had a flashback. I had a nerve die in one of my teeth, and it's akin to childbirth pain. You know, it's like horrific. I didn't know that. It's not like having an abscess. And it was so bad, I was banging my head, I was screaming, you know, as the tooth was dying. I was in such pain one night. I was screaming. I was in that pain that I suddenly had a flashback to when I was 6. Full flashback. I'd never had this before. And one of those bloody reptilian things looking at me with their yellow eyes, you know, like that close up with the face, you know, the teeth and that. And I was like, fuck, never seen that before, you know. It's real. You know, there are other races, definitely. There were other races before Adam and Eve, and there are other, you know, there are fallen angels and whatever. And have seen evidence of that stuff, and they are at Dulcie. Look, you got Phil Schneider, the geoengineer, who had all the scars from the wars underneath Dulcie when there was a war between the military and the Delta Force were down there, and your Dagons, you know, your Dagon reptilian things that are like, I don't know, about at least 7 foot. And they got plasma weapons and whatever, and Delta used plasma weapons and whatever. So, and they've, you know, his fingers are missing, he was cut open, and he came out and he showed you all these medals crumpled up like this alfoil and it reopened by itself and everything. And of course they assassinated him. He said, I'm writing a book. You never say that if you haven't released it. You know, I mean, here I've said it, but I've already released a book. That's all true. That was Dulcie, and I've been to Dulcie and I've seen shit there. Dulcie's where they had the big lab, the MK Ultra lab that John C. Lilly worked there, Michael Aquino, what's his face? Jolyon West had programming there. But they also were at the farm, so they had some stuff going on there. And then they had, and I saw Al Gray there at the farm as well, who's a piece of shit. And then Area 51 was where they kept all the Tesla craft, so your stealth bomber, which they'd been working on since like the 30s. That's symbiotically piloted. And again, they liked Alice pilots for that, 14-year-olds, whatever, because you can reach the pedal, but your brain is the best and you're more dexterous and whatever. Who's good at computer games, the adult or the kid, you know? But anyway, it was all, you didn't even need to use your hands most of the time. So anyway, they had all that stuff there. Pine Gap, I saw the typical UFO anti-gravitational, you know, Tesla back-engineered things, but had NASA written on the side of them. So there's all different sorts of things. They're back-engineered stuff. You know, you had that footage that Spielberg had of the alien autopsy from Roswell, and that looked real to me. It was on the cover of, I don't know, Life magazine or something, one of National Geographic or something in about 92, 93 or something. I looked at that. Well, my mother just didn't say anything, no warning, said, I want you to look at something, and showed me it. And I got this thing, and I screamed. I was 22, screamed through it and just screamed and went into shock. And my mum came over and said, it's okay. I just wanted to see if that triggered you. Yeah, it did, you know. So, yeah, I've seen that shit. I've seen one grey that I remember at Dulcie, and he was just walking around dressed in, like, clothes, like, and up an alley from the big main auditorium thing, which was like at least 3 stories high or whatever, was to test me. How would I react? And, that's can't remember what I remember of seeing that. That shit's all real. But they've got disclosure now. They've had disclosure in France. They've had disclosure in England. And now you got presidents sit down and go, oh, yeah, the aliens, yeah, they're real or whatever. Okay, you got all the, pilots have come out, ex-military. Yeah, this is real. Of course it's real. Stargate's real. CERN Hadron Collider, Alice, they're trying to tear the veil that separates this from the other dimensions. It's just a big kind of version of using clairvoyance to contact interdimensional entities. It's all real, So, and they're going to open it up. And the main project at CERN is called Alice, and it was based on their Alice project where they used girls like me. Alice, Project Alice is an extension of Project Alice. But I'll tell you what's not going to help you as a victim to recover, and that is clairvoyance, contacting fallen angels or your guiding angel or spirit, contacting aliens, talking to the White Brotherhood, which is the fallen, this sort of shit. Anyone who's doing that and they haven't done an hour of therapy in their life and they've not integrated, steer the hell away from them, And then you've got these other people, I say, you get these support groups online. If you haven't integrated, don't post. Don't tell everyone what to do if you haven't had some degree of success in therapy or whatever, And you got someone on there posting, oh, EMDR is just like programming, MK Ultra programming, because it's bilateral. And when we were kids, they beat me on one side and then the right, or they had sound going in left and then right. And oh my God, no, that's not what EMDR is, man. Don't talk. Don't put that out there. You've got a whole bunch of survivors who are struggling with their sense of identity because they've got, DID or trauma-based forced association is what I call it, to distinguish it from anything in the DSM that doesn't cut it, doesn't describe when it's artificially manufactured by the military in a lab setting according to their standardized protocol, and it's multiple splits, and they have designated parts and roles, unlike what they're saying and these narrative controllers are saying. None of that stuff's going to help you. You need the therapies that I talked about if you want to integrate, and you need to integrate. I mean, the benefits of integration are you don't become clingy on a therapist. You're never relying on a therapist again. You don't give a shit about therapists or what they think of you, or you don't need to bond with them for any reason anymore. That's all to do with attachment trauma, when they have destroyed your natural attachment to a parent figure. You won't suddenly be hit with flashbacks and strange emotions, or if you are, you'll be able to process them pretty quickly. You'll never be a slave you won't be vulnerable to hypnosis anymore. They can't get at you, There's a lot of benefits to doing it right. But you might be taken to the brink of death at worst. Yeah, it's terrifying. But at the end, you'll be glad you did it. Like I say, God, I hope I never have to go through that again, but I'm glad it's over. And it's kind of worth it,
I've heard survivors say that at certain parts in deprogramming or integration, they encounter alters that might be violent, mean, go against sort of the direction that the front personalities others go through. How did you navigate that? Because I think some people just want to some survivors shove those back down and lock them up and don't.
I had the Alice part totally was at the front and in control and ran the joint to some degree. Then when Alice was integrated, well, they had no Alice. Oh, shit. And that's when I could deal with Lilith. My God, that was terrifying. The Lilith part was terrifying. So, and then I had to deal with Angel and all that. So you have to get the parts on side. Sasha, the military, one of the Delta parts. I had multiple Delta parts, multiple Alices, every color. I had an Alice of every color, Delta soldier of every color, all this sort of stuff. So it's not just that simple. Anyway, you yourself inside have to get these parts under control. I never would go around saying, oh, my name's Alice. Oh, I'm Sasha now, and you have to call me Sasha. You have to call me they. You have to. I fucking hate that. I always did. I always will. I'll tell you why. It titillates therapists. You get these young therapists who themselves got the similar background, or they're just DID or whatever, like most of my therapists turn out to be. Top therapists turn out to be fucking crazy. You are and fearful. You know, they won't deal with your shit because they're afraid. It triggers theirs. If you want to improve your functional capacity in any way, in terms of the mental health side of it, if you want to, well, physical, you know, if you want to integrate, if you want to get better, you cannot rely upon another human being. There is no drug out there. There's no simple pill. No one's going to save you. No one's going to fix it for you. You know, you have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to take control. And inside of yourself, you have to make that decision. I am going to do this. I don't give a shit if this kills me. I'm going to die trying. Do or die, right? You know, get tough or die, they tell you in the military. You have to, if you care, you will call yourself by your proper name. I don't care if you hate the name. I don't care if it's linked to parents, this and that. Whatever the fucking birth name you've got, unless you named Hitler or, you know, Satan or, you know, some shit on your birth certificate that's really offensive, we'll change it. But go by one name, and that's your name. Stop going to these groups and where you all reinforce each other's mental problems, you know, mental illness, and instead of, you know, focusing on mental health. Integration is the key, right? I don't know why you want to stay there in that horrible place where you're just prone to fear, where you're vulnerable, and people can access you. It's just, you know, and you've got to. What was I saying? What was the original question again? You were saying, because I was getting to a point
about creating cohesion.
I need the pad. This is the problem, hey? The notepad. Yeah, go on. Say it again.
Creating cohesion within the system.
Oh, yes. So you're going to get the parts on side when some part takes responsibility, you take responsibility, you tell the parts what to do. There was a time when I finally saw that Kabbalistic tree of life, bloody Sephira, you know, structure. And I remember seeing it because I was made to visualize it in Joseph Mengelé's lab. And I was looking at it. And then my therapist said, he was good. He said, now, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to explore that further? And in a way, I'm disappointed I didn't, because I could tell you more about it. But, you know, I've got limited time in my life before I go. And everything takes hours and hours and hours per incident. So, and I said, no. And I took it to all the parts in the, in the kindergarten visualization. I displayed it. I called everyone out. I displayed it. I said, this is it. This is the system. This is fake as shit. You've all been deceived, right? And I made every part get on their knee. And it was very real, this experience, when I used to go inside my head, because it's interdimensional, like I say. And I made everyone bow and confess Jesus Christ as Lord. And I had no trouble. I had trouble with parts, like each part wants their, I call it their like 15 minutes of fame. You know, we have this, where I live, they used to have this event like once every month or so, and they'd have 15 minutes of fame, and everybody would go at the local village hall, and it would be a barbecue or whatever for the locals, and everyone could get up and do whatever they wanted for 15 minutes on stage and entertain people, right? And so someone got up, a shit comedian would get up, tell the same shit jokes every time, and whatever, you know, or someone get up there and sing, or, you know, whatever. So it's like that with the parts. I'd let them out, but I was highly disciplined And it was like, nope, you're coming out for this long. But see, that's the military leader in me. Alice was the military trained leader. And I ran that show like the military, like a team. And I wouldn't allow any shit, right? No misbehaviours, da-da-da. So come out, even the sexual parts come out, like, and I'd be like, okay, that's enough, get in, you know. So, and at the end, you have to, and I had okay, I'll tell you a couple of stories. One was when, oh my God, one, I've got it in the book where Sasha in this world, first of all, had no respect and just, I was picked up and choked against a wall by this, you know, part inside my head in therapy. And it was real, man. It was terrible. And then I had to order them and stand down, you know. You're shooting above your rank, sort of thing, and it, you know, and once I got that part on side, then that's the part that came and helped rescue the children. And you know, when I do a visualization, I had to change the ending to strip the emotion off, and so you know, I'd send Delta team this one, that one in to torch the joint behind me, you know, while we did this. So there was that. Now I'll tell you one other story. This is how hairy it got in therapy, and I had. Thank God for this therapist. So for 4.5 years I had him, and he was like, oh, you know, it was so hard working with him. Then lockdown came, and then he was actually charged with historical child offences, and I knew it was bullshit. I had warned him, they'll come after you. Every one of my therapists, they'd come after in some way. And I'd warned him, and then this happened. It was his slutty ex-wife, you know, wanting child custody, and he'd come into a lot of inheritance, and she wanted another bite of the cherry, and accused that he had molested her child that he had kindly raised and everything. Anyway, and it all went to nothing, of course, but I knew it wasn't true, but he was vulnerable. And I remember meeting him, and he had to tell me this because it was still working, but the psychology board said, you must tell your survivors of child abuse this. And he came, and I hadn't seen him for 2.5 months. I'm like, what the fuck, where is he, you know? Anyway, he agreed to come and do therapy during lockdown at my house, and there was because there was very strict rules here, and but he was allowed to come do therapy in my place, and he agreed to. And I'm thinking, you know, okay, that's good. And mate, we ended up doing, and that's when I went, now I'm going to get somewhere with you. And he dropped his guard, and he bonded with me like you wouldn't believe, like Delta teammates would, and all this. And he just, and the way he described it was, man, I just trusted you that you'd take us to wherever we needed to go. I'm like, okay. And holy shit, went from 2-hour sessions to 3-hour sessions a week. And yeah, and then I'd have a team of other therapists who'd do other stuff, and then they'd mop up after it. And, you know, and then I had art therapy. And so I was processing 7 hours a week, you know, a team of therapists. And I just went, fuck this, I'm going for this, you know. I went, oh, I remembered when I saw him vulnerable, I went, my goodness, now I can't believe it. I remember the Alice part went, holy shit, we got a shot at this. And to integrate all the big stuff. And anyway, here's one session. This is how bad it got. I had integrated Alice, blah, blah. That's the story in itself. Then I hadn't done Lilith, and well, that was terrifying. And to access Lilith, I had to be triggered. Somehow it was connected to when Delta Force commander, that Victor Chan, had me on the ground. He was a sadistic bastard. He had me on the ground in what's called a jiu-jitsu closed position. So when I'm down there, I've got my legs wrapped up around his ribs, and then my head is vulnerable, and he's teaching me how my head's vulnerable. He's got my head and he's slamming it on the ground when I was 12 or something. Anyway, and then to access that memory for some reason, this Lilith part, the bit you saw in the diagram, fucking got my therapist into that jiu-jitsu position. And I remember going into that Lilith part of my brain and being so confident and contemptuous for him, and just so confident that I could just snap this guy like a twig. And now this guy was not much older than I, surfed all the time, worked out in a gym, strong bloke, healthy, fit, right? And muscly, had enough muscles. And I had him in a closed position, and he wasn't going anywhere. And then he was struggling to get off me. And I'm saying, fight me, fight me. He said, no, I'm not fighting you. Anyway, so I got my right thumb, shoved it in his left clavicle area, and I just knew what to do straight away. And I collapsed his lungs using black martial arts techniques, and he collapsed and he gave in. Anyway, and I wanted him. Anyway, I banged my own head, and he's going, "Are you happy now?" You know, like this. And it's like, because I'm saying, fight me, you know, like this, and he wouldn't. And it's like this guy went into shock. This is the reason why he left psychology in the end. You know, whatever, he retired, but he retired rich, so it was fine. But fuck, you know, this poor guy. And but he had just finished saying, none of this, nothing you've ever done, I'm never fearful working with you. Nothing ever concerns me or frightens me. Bring it on, sort of thing. And I remember this part going, okay, you know, and it's like, holy shit. And I just went, oh my God, I really do know this stuff. Like, you know, and anyway, well, then I went into, and then I screamed at him, I'm in, get off, you know. And then, oh my God, I went into the Lilith part when I was 6, and I started going to dorsal vagal collapse, and I nearly died. So that was like, everything started spinning. I started reliving being spun and drowned on the big wheel. And to the point where it took some time, I was getting worse and worse, and the vagus nerve was collapsing. So my nervous system was collapsing. It went from elevated to vitals dropping. And I was shaking. I was going through shaking and vomiting. I was dry retching. I hadn't eaten. And shaking, and then dry retching, shaking, dry retching, and screaming. He was so terrified, he got on his hands and knees and started praying. And he said, can I ring the ambulance? And I went, I'll die. He couldn't even light up the room with his mobile phone because the sensory killing me. And I was screaming, and I wouldn't let him ring an ambo. And he's like fucking panicking. And I said, no, the lights will kill me, and the hospital lights, the ambulance lights, I'll be dead. And I was ending. Anyway, somehow my mother, hours later, I was on the brink, and my mum arrived, and she was a very gifted naturopath. She didn't know what was going on. He had left by then and left me in the care of my husband, who had to be called home. And my mum started working on the solar plexus area or whatever, and she just did her thing, her emergency medicine thing. And I got to the point where I heard the vitals machine from when I was 6 go beep, you know, and when I flatlined, and that was the end of me. And then I just came online, and everything settled. The vagus nerve brought me back online, and it was fine. Anyway, when I told the backup psychologist who knew the primary psychologist, and she said, what happened? Tell me exactly what happened. I told her, and she said, I had a client who died of that. Exactly the same as you, and died. And she said, oh, mate, no one in Australia knows. It's a shame you didn't go to hospital and wasn't recorded. I said, I wouldn't be here. I just knew. And I said to my mum, can your nervous system just die like the heart can just have a heart attack and die? And Mum said, I don't think so. This was even outside of Mum's scope of understanding, or anyone's. So I get it when people say, yeah, I don't want to go there in therapy. And I've heard stories where, you know, somebody's doing EMDR and they say, if you just stay with it, you know, in 10 minutes, you'll never have to deal with it. No, and they leave the room, never go in there again. I get it. Who the fuck wants to get in touch with that I'm talking about? No. Shoot me before that happens. No. Never doing that again. So So this is what you've got to deal with parts, yeah. But that's the extreme end. There's a continuum, and hopefully people, not many, are at that end, that extreme right tail, you know, of the range of possible things you can encounter, you know. And another thing, like when I integrated Alice, how I did it was because I've got another story of how I, you know, integrated some of the stuff that Gettinger did and whatever, the drug flashbacks and this and that. It's in the book. But with Alice, I had to play the song. There's a song, Living Next Door to Alice. is they would play when they were doing work with me on Alice, Getting or Was, when I was 10 or something anyway. And they'd play this song, so I had to put that song on a loop, and that would trigger. You've got to trigger this stuff. Triggers are treasures, man. That's your way in. So that's how you get in and open up the memory engram. And that's a way that I did it. Another time was playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the original from the original movie, on a loop. That'll work. You got to play it on a loop while you're undergoing EMDR and hypnosis induction, whatever. You just got to fucking bombard yourself. You've got to throw yourself into it. A friend of mine who's been through the same level as this crap, when I used to tell her, this is what we just did today in therapy and that, she goes, oh my God, you two are cowboys. She said, it's like you both throwing parachutes on and jumping out of the plane without checking the parachutes working. And I went, yeah, whatever, And, I wouldn't do that now, but I'm saying this is, at the time, it was kind of fun for that Delta part of me that got off on the adrenaline rush. My therapist was he would have made a very good Delta soldier. He was ideal for this shit. He's willing to do it all. And he liked it. Sort of, there's nothing else to do in lockdown. He thought the world was ending. So it was like, oh well, this is something interesting, to do. And he believed me. But he came into my world. That's the thing about having that. We bonded. You've got to bond. You can never have sex. It's got to be, a very intimate bond, but not go over that level, because then you lose respect for the therapist. It's all over. But it has to be a very strong bond. And we did. And then you alpha sync. So when you bond, your right hemisphere syncs with that other person's right hemisphere. It's the bond a mother and child has, the right brain to right brain synchronization and oxytocin release and all that sort of thing in a strong relationship. You must do that, and then you're reading each other's thoughts and you're finishing each other's sentences, and you can read each other's facial expressions and everything without having to. And we did that, and it was a wild ride, and but it worked. And he came in. He didn't just he came into my head. It was intuitive. They've got to be intuitive, and he came. I took him by the hand. He came into my world, and I led him around and whatever, and he was willing. Now, good luck getting a therapist who's willing to do all that, And he knew the basics of hypnosis, but he says, I never actually formally did a hypnosis on you, Fiona. You went there, so we can self-hypnotise. We can do self-induction. I used to always do it anyway, and even when therapists, they're doing EMDR and they're going, oh, yes, I don't know hypnosis, I don't use it. And in my head, I'm going, 1, 2, 3. I'm inducing myself and taking myself into the trance state with the half good or half useful. You have to stop using excuses. You have to want to do this enough. And it's amazing. The human mind, the human brain is beyond what the textbooks begin to tell you. The military have got all the information. They know all this. But it's phenomenal, and you can undo it. You've got it all in there. Visualization is one of the most strongest tools. Get yourself in an altered state, use visualization to do the rest. Any other questions?
I just had 2 more closing questions. I know you've been on here with me a while. Do you have time? Okay. They're really about you. So I wanted to see, when times got really rough, a lot of people, especially, vulnerable survivors, they're so excited to speak out. Once they do, they encounter opposition on some level, maybe not as extreme as you, but then they shut back down and they go quiet. They don't want to deal with it anymore. And it's a shame, because the more survivors that speak out, the more sort of headway we can get with getting exposure on this. How did you keep going when times got tough, and what wisdom can you impart on other survivors who are going through a really hard time, whether they've spoken out or not, and just want to quit?
Don't follow my example. People did and ended up hurt. I've always said, don't just do what I did in terms of going public and that. There is a risk. If it's at this level, if it's the Epstein level, look what they did to Virginia Giuffre. You'd have to be a fool to think she killed herself. You know, they will take you out if they can. I'm an anomaly. Now, I was called that within that world. The Grand Dame who trained me called me my little anomaly. There's something about me that's different. I'm weird. That you can't put your finger on. I would put it down to, you know, it's a God thing. I think this was my job, the role I've played. I mean, I've started an underground revolution, and it's just insane how big it went. But I was used to do that. You know, I don't think the military ever believed that someone who was at the highest level within their system that I was at would ever get out, would ever talk, live to tell, be able to tell, would survive the programming and the suicide programming and everything and their attacks and everything. But I think it's because, you know, the Lord had a hand on me. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, these people, it's like looking down on a chessboard. If you're down on the chessboard, you can't see clearly where everything is. You can't see the forest for the trees, and but God can. And it really is, at the end of the day, these people say they're all knowing, all powerful, all present, you know, they got all the resources in the world, but there's something bigger than them. And that is the biblical God. So, and you get to him through Jesus Christ, you know. He is Lord. I'm a testimony to his existence and authority. And I think that ultimately is the only way anybody ever really gets out of this. And I've got like a non-Christian therapist, and he's even, you know, at the moment, and he's going, I think the only thing, and he works with a number of us, and, you know, people like me, and he goes, the common denominator seems to be they're Christians, people get out, you know, or whatever. And it's true, you know, freedom through Christ. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's real. I had a bullet put through my windscreen, I know, during COVID when I was driving on the M1 highway, and then they left a meat cleaver below the bullet. It was ricocheted, and the meat cleaver was left that night, overnight, just in case I didn't get the message. You know, stuff will happen, you know. But remember, you know, the Bible says our war is not against flesh and blood, it's against those entities.
Yes.
You know, and that's what I was saying about people like the Rothschilds and the really elites and that sort of thing. You know, they worship, you know, fallen angels. And they themselves are the offspring of those fallen angels in part, you know, and they need enough human DNA to keep going, you know. So they breed with people like Princess Di and whatever, you know, keep themselves going. When it gets hard, you know, I'm a Christian at the end of the day. And I mean, look, I became, I've got to say, during lockdown and when I was doing the heaviest of the therapy that I was describing with that one therapist, he ended up labeling me alcohol dependent for a while. And the neighbours would laugh. Like, we'd get together during COVID and that, and you weren't allowed to go anywhere and blah, 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 but you're allowed to meet to discuss fence lines and cows and whatever. And then we'd go, fence meeting, you know, with the neighbours and that. And we all drank a lot and whatever, which was very damaging. But, oh, my God, you know, there were times where I just self-medicated with beer and my therapist would join me. I know, right? Very experienced veteran, specialist in trauma would join me and just go, fuck this. You know, like the world was not what he thought it was. And you know, it's like how people are opening up about Epstein now, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't recommend drugs. I don't think they are too great, like, you know, mind-altering substances and whatever. You know, I think they can fry your head and cause psychosis and stuff. And some people are very vulnerable to that, especially if you're an introvert. But, oh, yeah, drank a lot of alcohol during lockdown and the height of the therapy until I integrated. I mean, holy shit, what do you do? It's like, that was heavy. You know, I went to a lot of health retreats where they shot at my car on the way to one, you know, to try and stay alive. And, you know, my nervous system kept collapsing. The vagus nerve thing kept collapsing. I would have to get up at 1, 3 in the morning and waking up, my nervous system's collapsing. I could feel it, and I'd throw myself into an ice bath to stay alive, to click the nervous system back on, to reboot it, the vagus nerve, and get it. Oh yeah, it just kept collapsing. Yeah, it was really bad, really hairy. So I don't know. I just keep soldiering on, you know, and every day I go, take me now. You know, when I lost my mum, yeah, 2 and a bit years ago, whatever, now 2.5 years ago, that was hard because she was my main person I had that I could talk to and uncensored, you know, and she understood it and whatever. And she was the strongest Christian I know I've ever met. Most genuine I've ever met. And yeah, and like I'm, you know, I've been struggling to do this book. I've got all this knowledge now, way more than what I wrote about in the book. And I, you know, all I wanted to do was, I was waiting and waiting. I had had so many offers for interviews since the Epstein stuff and all that. And just before that and whatever. And I was like, no, not till I've got something else new to say. And so I got the book ready and all this sort of shit. And I'm just going, you know, maybe we're going to go into nuclear war before I've got a book ready or whatever. But you know what I mean? And I'm just, yeah, so I'll get something out there, just, you know, and then I see all this stuff online. It's dominated by the CIA again and all this shit. Like, it really got to me when Gabriel Mate was, you know, coming out and, you know, and Van der Kolk and that were, you know, come and be hypnotised. And what the, you know, trying to control survivors and stop probably what's happening now with the Epstein files. Leading up to the Epstein stuff, they've released all this stuff to try and ensnare as many victims as we can. And, yeah, not good. And I couldn't stand it any longer. And then, you know, and they try it on me all the time. They're always having a go at me. There was a car wreck a couple of years ago, you know, they T-boned my car, the Uber we were in. Yeah, and I said 5 days before, I said, I think they're going to T-bone my car. And they did. I wasn't even the driver or anything. Yeah, they tried to wipe us out and everything. Yeah, so it's they don't let up. Government agencies pick on me all the time, you know, and I just went, you know. So I'm pretty, yeah, I'm worn out. You know, I'm not a super soldier no more. Yeah, my brain's gone. I used to have amazing photographic memory. Now it's mush. It's really a struggle now. It's like I don't think in pictures anymore like I used to. I used to have this amazing ability, and now it's shit. And so when I did a bit of study, I went back and did a bit of, during lockdown when no one had anything to do, I went and did you could do a lot of online stuff and whatever, and I just did online stuff, and it, you know, helped me to update my currency of knowledge and see what everybody was, you know, what was going on in the therapy world. What did they believe? Had they progressed? Nah, not really. So, yeah, and it gave me access to university libraries and research papers, which you can't get to unless you pay $1 million for access. Each article, each journal costs a fortune. So, yeah, I did it for that reason, and just a little bit of part-time study, and struggled. It was so hard. Yeah, to try and finish this book. So, praying people out there, pray, you know, that I'm burnt out, and like I've got writer's block, and I'm just like, you know, trying to struggle. It's like dragging myself. The part of my brain that you need to synthesize information and write it all down is burnt out and inflamed. So, yeah, so prayers that I can do it and put it out there. There's lots of good ways to release books now, you know. I'll try and edit this one properly, get someone to edit it or something, you know. Someone left me all this money when she died, and then her ex-husband stole it all off. It was for the book. She wanted me to publish the book properly, and she was paying all this money, and he nicked it. So, but there are alternatives, you know, ways of self-publishing that are a bit better than putting up the ebook that I did, whatever you call it, shoving it up there, you know, release it, you know.
Thanks for answering that. And we're also grateful that you kept going despite all the obstacles that you've encountered, and you've somehow plowed through all of them, you know, and you're still going today and still creating. And we're really grateful for that. And that sort of leads me into my last question of, how can we support you? Where can people connect with you? Be an ally for you.
Yeah, I'm tired, and I'm not going to be gathering survivors' testimonies and things. I did that for 6 years and I burnt out doing it. And that's not my goal. I think the Epstein file says it all now. You know, bloody kids made out of lambskins and made into lampshades and everything like the Nazis did, and bloody the stuff, you know, it's just horrific. They put it up there and then pull it off and put it up, and I think they've made their point. You know, this stuff is real. And maybe protect my Twitter page. I went up there a week ago, and it's been taken down 3-4 times already. And oh yeah, she's a bot. You know, they get angry when I expose people and whatever. So maybe if they protect it, you know, you're welcome to share anything, and report anyone that you think is a bot or a troll that's really bad. You're welcome to reproduce any of my articles or book or anything, so long as you don't sell it. Repost whatever, you know. And yeah, just share my stuff as wide and far as you can in its entirety if you want. Put it up, make sites. When I released Eyes Wide Open, it was huge. Like, people, I just said, get it out there, put it on discs, you know, print it off, host it. People put it on Bitcoin sites, you know, they put it everywhere. It ended up in the National Library of Australia. I don't know how it ended up there. My stupid little unedited conspiracy nutter book, you know. Yeah, just stick up for me when online. That's the best thing you can do when the military paid trolls who are paid to sit there on their fat asses and attack survivors. Attack them back. Yes. Gang up and attack the fakes. I'm not calling for a rise up or whatever, but, you know, against real people. I'm saying when they're fake online, trolls and bots, take them down. You know, support David Schurter. He's real. I think it's really hard for men compared to females. It's not great to say, hey, I was fucked up the arse by a keno or whatever, you know. Support the blokes. However they, you know, they get upset, they express it in anger, you know, frustration or whatever. Women are more just emotional. So, yeah, support people, you know. Believe us, spread it all out there. The best thing you can do, what they hate, is spreading it. Spread it out there. Spread the truth.
And I'm so happy you are on social media, so people can follow Fiona on X at the Fiona Barnett, and I'm going to have that in the show notes. I will also have her book link. It's free. I encourage you guys, like she said, please read it, share it. It's free. There's no excuse for us to not have this in our collection and to keep it bookmarked. And it's an excellent book, obviously, from what you guys heard today, to help educate the public and to give to other survivors on what's going on and how we heal this and how we get through this. And her blog is an amazing resource as well. We went through a couple articles. Those are also free to read and share. So you guys can go on her blog, and that is at fionabarnett.org. And I'm going to have that in the show notes also. And you guys can flow through there. The articles that we went through today, we showed a little bit. You guys probably saw the Nicole Kidman, her newest update with the Kidmans and sort of her take on what's going on.
If you want scroll through that's amazing. So I went and bought that. I bought that from England.
Oh,
Go
wow.
and have a look. Yeah, go and have a look at it. It cost me $50 from Australia. And scroll down. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, there's a nice quote in there. Keep going. This is when, yep, up, go back up, scroll up. There. That quote, no, the quote, there, that quote. Read that. Read that aloud. Prince Andrew quoting.
We have to make sure that our children don't accept abuse, that they point the finger and say, quote, this is unacceptable, unquote, but they should not have to take responsibility for their own protection.
That's Prince Andrew. Right? So all these charities are bullshit. That was England's top child sex abuse charity, sponsored by him. And Nicole's in the file 66 times, a couple of times. Go scroll right down. I think I've got reference to it. Keep going right down the bottom.
Oh, here.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Very damning emails where Epstein, they're directly talking about Nicole. I've got to hear, call me back, do this for Nicole. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that one. Call me. Yeah, I'm with Nicole now, says a billionaire, and the other guy says, Epstein says, call me. So there you go. It's like I said, this whole network. And that other article, the most recent article, the update, the second article, the update that I've pinned to my Twitter page. I mean, that's just my rebuttal to the attacks on me in Australia by Australian Broadcasting Corporation. They're just bastards. What they did to me and how they destroyed me in Australia, my credibility, and not totally, but they tried. And so it's got a lot of, and just some relevant emails there to do with this. Australia will find it relevant, where there's mention of, Prime Minister Paul Keating's daughter, when I named Paul Keating. Bob Hawke is, all these things have come out in the press. Bob Hawke, Prime Minister, who raped me, covered up the rape of his daughter by another politician. And I think there's some others, there's all different things. It's like, well, and now in the news everywhere, it's this, currently in Sydney, going to court, is this satanic pedo,
Yes.
international ring involving, a decorated New South Wales police officer. Oh, like, hello. Well, all the stuff I was hammered for saying.
Right. Some people have been saying this for a long time. You guys need the MSM to tell you it's real. It's ridiculous.
They do. It doesn't exist unless it's in the mainstream media. And I've been in the mainstream media. I did a press conference. I was in the #1 story in the Sydney Morning Herald 10 years ago. I mean, what more I did. I was in local newspapers. I was in newspapers all over Australia, everywhere. Everyone knew my name then. They'd done everything to try and stamp it out. And then I was crazy because I said politicians rape kids. Then I was crazy because I said they're all involved in ritually abusing kids. Then I was crazy because I said MK Ultra existed in Australia. And, and now I'll be crazy because I've said there's a Western Child Soldier program. Well, I don't care. I don't care. My time's nearly up. I'm old. I'm broken. I've got injuries everywhere. I'm in pain every day, all day, from one of the injuries caused by the military. It doesn't matter, but you're not going to suppress the truth forever. It's got out there, and the Bible says at the end, everything that was hidden will be brought out into the light and made known to everyone. And I was promised. God promised me in 2010. I prayed and prayed for vindication, compensation, reinstatement, and then I had the wildest thing that's in the book happen, and I was promised you'll be justified, you'll be recompensed, you'll be reinstated. Now, whatever that means, I don't care. Doesn't matter whether it's in this life or the next or whatever. But and I'm not suicidal. I never have. You can't bump me off like that. And I'm not a right-wing terror threat. You can't bump me off for that reason. And I don't have weapons. Can't bump me off for that reason. I have to find something else. If it's a car crash or whatever, it probably was them. So, it's all coming out, it's real. The Western Child Soldier Program is the last thing to come out. One day they will find the files proving it all. That one day they'll find the movie they shot with me in it. The Best Little Whore in Texas. I was 12. I took Taken to America, shot it on the set of The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. They turned it into an underground child porn film, The Best Little Whore in Texas, and I was gang raped in that. And it was the same director. And some of the same people who worked on the set for the movie were reused. I don't know how many, but I know there was some. So, it'll all come out one day. Someone will find that movie. Someone will find the files, the MK Ultra files, the military files. Someone will find something. Prove it all true. And then, after I'm dead and gone, 20 years down the track or 30, they'll go, shit, Fiona Barnett was right. She was telling the truth. That poor woman. And what did we do? We crucified her.
Well, hopefully we can get this exposed while you're here so you can be celebrated. And regardless, your work is just going to live on for generations to come. Thank you for breaking the cycle, for all you have done for survivors, for helping orchestrate so much movement in your country that expanded throughout the world. Like I said, you've been an inspiration for me in my podcast, in my journey, and you've been named countless times on my podcast. So you do have a legacy while you're here. People do believe you, and you have changed and saved so many lives of the people who have the eyes to see and ears to hear what you have been saying. And thank you for never giving up and for all the work that you've done, Fiona. I can't even imagine how exhausted you must be and have been. And it's just been, amazing how you've helped pioneer where we're at today. We wouldn't be here in this space with files released and so many survivors speaking out without you.
Yeah, thank you. And just, hang in there for the ride. We'll see what happens. And at the end of the day, my final words will be every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And these people who think they're all powerful are going to be punished for what they've done.
Amen.
God cares.
Yes.
Don't blame God. Blame them. Blame the evil gods they worship.
Yes.
God didn't do this. Jesus didn't do this. He's there for kids. He always was, and he always will be.
Amen, Fiona. Is there any closing words that you wanted to say?
No, just, there is a God and it's not you.
Amen to that. And so for everybody listening, please go in the show notes and support Fiona. We'll have updates. And if you guys follow her on X, you'll be able to receive them live on when her new book will be released. In the meantime, go check out.
The book will be called, the working title is The Fight to Remember, Trauma-Based, The Fight to Remember, and then the subtitle is Trauma-Based Forced Association and the Western Child Soldier Program.
Brilliant. I'm excited.
There are lots of prayers, and I'll post up on my blog site. I'll post up, meanwhile, some stuff to help survivors in their therapy journey that, if they're interested in integrating.
Wonderful. And if you guys are also interested in seeing the second, or I should say the first article on that had the Eastern Star and all of the different parts that she was sharing, that's February 2022. I'll have that in the show notes too. But if you guys are listening and not watching, you guys can go ahead and just click that link on her blog and it'll take you to the article that we covered today. But go in the show notes, go support her blog, read, share her book, go support her on X, beat down those bullies that are coming after her.
My YouTubes are up there. Candy Girl YouTube is on my YouTube. Fiona Barnett YouTube.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't show that one. That's awesome. I'll have that in the show notes too. Perfect. So we have a YouTube channel that people can connect with you on as well. So all Fiona's links, anything she wants to share with you guys, I'm going to have that in the show notes. I'll have my links in the show notes as well, you guys. Thank you all so much for all your support of survivors and for this movement. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you all for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.